Tonight, Pandora shows us the weirder side of reincarnation, specifically the part where you need to wait 18 years for your soulmate to be legal again. John Romita Jr. kicked out this week's Superman in just under 5 minutes. No, that is not a compliment. And introducing G.I. Zombie, proving once and for all that not even death can get you out of government service. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 151 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and we have a doozy of an episode ahead of us. 15 comics, a brand new number 1, and an anthology comic in Secret Origins which pumps that page count up by way too much. So if it's all the same to you, I'm kind of just going to speed through this intro. But first, I'm just going to bitch an ever so tiny little bit. For those of you who don't know me personally, good. I don't want you to, but I'm going to share this little detail. I work in comics distribution. I help make sure that comic shops get comics. It's what I do as a career, and it's very fulfilling for the most part. But the week that I am recording this, and the week that it goes out, is the week that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are getting a reboot. They are going back to number 1. Maybe it's a relaunch, whatever you want to call it. Point being, it's a big event title. And because of that, for the past 2 weeks, my life has been nothing but turtles. These turtles have drained the ever-loving soul out of me, trying to make sure everybody gets 10,000 copies of Turtles number 1. So, believe me when I say, I understand how Shredder feels. I get it. And I wish him the best of luck. Anywho, let's talk about DC Comics, because that's, I think, IDW. Dark Horse? I don't know. Whichever one. So yeah, we are going to start off with any one of these comics here, in no particular order. We have Batman, Batman and Robin, Catwoman, Superman, Red Lanterns, Aquaman, The Flash, Secret Origins, Wonder Woman, All-Star Western, Justice League Dark, Pandora, our 2 weeklies, Batman Eternal and Future's End, and a brand new number 1, which has the longest title to date, Star-Spangled War Stories, featuring G.I. Zombie. Now, I don't know if the featuring is technically part of the title, but it is on my little spreadsheet. So, it's a lot. We got a lot going into this episode, so I hope that you will stick through it and enjoy all of it. I think it makes the most sense without any event comics coming out this week to start with the new number 1. So, mature audience warning ahead, G.I. Zombie is a very gruesome book. Star-Spangled War Stories featuring G.I. Zombie number 1, written by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Scott Hampton. So I had no idea what this book was at all. I got G.I. Zombie. That's about it. So we open up in Nowhere, Mississippi at a place called Eli's Joint. It's one of those seedy little bars. And we meet this blonde woman just sitting at the bar minding her own business. Dude comes up. He introduces himself as Duke. He's got like a biker jacket, long hair, glasses, the whole works. Comes up and says hey to the woman. And we see that she's basically like, oh yeah, I'm not interested in any of the boys around here. I'm looking for men. And they're basically just like roasting each other lightly a little bit. But Duke's like, yeah, well, nobody's ever seen you around here before. She's like, oh yeah, just got out of prison, came here. And I'm living with my sister, so looking for a new place to stay. You happen to know where I could find one? And they flirt for a little bit until eventually she's like, oh, well, maybe we'll go play some pool. How about that? So they head over to the pool table. And as they're like finishing up the game, one of the guys is like, oh, you owe me a kiss if you don't sink this shot. And she's like, if I don't sink this shot, I'll let you feel me up. And it's like, ooh, all right, this girl's got something going on. So she continues talking to the whole gang and Duke and all that and basically says like, yeah, I've got special skills. There's a reason I ended up in prison, whatnot. And then as they're really starting to quote unquote hit it off, all of a sudden Dude comes in saying, hey, Duke, we got some trouble. We found a Fed. And all of a sudden bar like shuts down. Everybody leaves except for Duke and his little gang, and this woman, this blonde woman, staying by. I think she gave her name at some point here. I don't know. Regardless, she basically is allowed to stay temporarily, and the other guys are like, we don't know. You just showed up out of nowhere. We don't know what's going on with you. And she's like, oh, feds are what put me in prison. I hate feds. I'm totally in for like messing this guy up. Let's do it. So they bring this guy in. They set him down. They get his FBI badge. And she's like, hey, Duke, like, if you're concerned about me, let me prove myself. I'll go over there. I'll take care of things. And Duke's like, all right, but if you try anything, I will straight up kill you. So she goes over, sits on the Fed's lap, takes the tape off his mouth, and basically just like he's like yelling at her, just like, oh yeah, I didn't tell anything to these guys. You think you can make a difference? And she's like, oh, well, they don't know how like to properly handle a man. I, however, do. She reaches down, grabs his nuts, and just starts twisting, just like, now, how about you tell us what we need to know, or else I'm gonna turn you from a bull into a cow. And the other people are standing back like, Jesus, man, this is some pretty messed up stuff. So he spits in her face, and she's like, all right, now we've made things personal. Someone get me a raincoat and a machete. So she gets dressed up. She comes back, and the Fed is like, if you do this, there's no coming back. You're going to get a lethal injection. She's like, oh, I've had worse. So they put his hands on the table, and she's not even like asking questions or anything. She's just like, oh, you don't want to miss this. And she chops off one of his hands. And the other people are just like, okay, yeah, she's crazy. She's like actually crazy, but she's definitely legit. She's willing to go the distance here. So the Fed's like looking up in shock, and she's like, all right, ready for seconds, unless you're going to like give us information you need. And she chops off the other hand. And as he's just sitting there looking at the stumps of hands as bleeding out on the table, she walks over to Duke and is just like, hey, this guy's not going to give up anything. He's dead weight. We need to take him out. And she's just like, okay, well, we got a place we can keep him. It's just like, no, not out of like this place. I mean out. And she pulls out a gun from her waistband and just shoots him in the head. And so he's dead on the table. Everyone else is like, Jesus Christ, this woman, what the hell? So she takes a drink and is basically like, hey, look, I'll clean up this mess. I got a place just outside of town. It's a big lake. I can disappear him there with the gators, no problem. And he's just like, all right, yeah, no, sounds good. And she's like, oh, well, you know, can we meet up tomorrow? I'd love to see you again. It's going to meet you back up here. And he's like, no. Meet me up at this cabin. It's down the street. It's just, I'll see you there. And she's like, perfect, awesome. Gives him a kiss. Heads out with the body. As she makes her way down the road, she pulls to the side, gets out, throws up. She arrives at a motel, drags the body inside, and then a voice says, like, you okay? I heard you puke. And we see it's the Fed, who's still alive, with his hands cut off and a bullet in his skull. And wouldn't you guess it? This is the GI zombie. So apparently this woman's name is Carmen King. She is a mercenary, like soldier of fortune, something like that. And apparently, for whatever reason, she is assigned to the Department of Defense and is working with GI Zombie, who is a black ops thing that nobody knows about and is able to basically sell this because he's able to get himself killed, quote unquote, over and over again. So she pulls out his hands and reattaches them, and the body just like automatically absorbs. And she's like, this is disgusting. I hate everything about this. And he's like, yeah, I know. It's not great. But hey, at the very least, the makeup's a lot better than what it used to be. And he goes and he washes his face, and we see that his skin is just bleached white. Like there's no blood at all there. And apparently to bleed out on the table, he had to drink 3 gallons of pig's blood in order to have that leak out properly. So he basically gives a little thing of like, hey, I'm old, ridiculously old. I've been a soldier forever. And yeah, this is just me continuing on with my creed to protect our nation, blah, blah, blah. So she starts getting ready for bed. And as she goes to take a shower, she comes back out. And he's just like, all right, well, you know, maybe we should look into this, talk about like what we're going to be doing tomorrow, figure all that stuff out. And she's like, no. This is weird. I'm still getting used to this. I'm going to bed. You're sleeping on the floor. Do you even need to sleep? I don't like how do zombies work? And he's like, well, first off, I have a name. It's Jared. And it's like, okay, Jared, you just be over there. I'm going to sleep. I'll see you in the morning. And he's like, oh, well, I can get some breakfast in the morning. And she's like, no, you cannot. Good night. So He's supposed to stay put because he's Black Ops, obviously, not supposed to be seen, but he can't help himself. He goes outside the cabin, and just down the street, we see there is a gas station where a young girl has wet herself because she is unable to hold it long enough. The dad, abusive, is just yelling at the wife and the daughter outside the car about the mess she made. The mom's trying to defend her kid, and the dad hits the wife in the face and like stomps on her leg. And we see the mom is crying out for help, like hoping someone can save her. And then all of a sudden, Jared, the GI zombie, comes shuffling down the street, and he puts on the full zombie act, just like, and he comes up to this guy, grabs him, throws him against the car, rips off his arm, and just starts eating him. And we get a shot of the young girl in the back of the window, just like looking at this happening, just dead-eyed. And Jared turns to the wife, and it's just like, hey, I can't stop myself. You got to get going now. So they get in the car and drive away, where he takes the body out into the woods and finishes eating. So next morning, he's back in the apartment, or in the motel room, and Carmen's like, where the hell were you, man? I told you not to leave here. And he's just like, I just went for a walk. Nobody saw me. No big deal. And she's like, all right, whatever, but I need to go get some food, and then we can go out there and continue with our mission. So they go out into the car, they take a little drive, and apparently the mission is that this Duke guy stole a bunch of heavy rifles that were destined for a military outpost, and one of them was traced back to him, but there's like 500 left. So they're trying to figure out where the rest of them are, and they think, get ingratiated with them and figure out where it is. But as Carmen's driving, she's not paying attention to the road, and she accidentally hits a deer. Deer goes through the windshield. It is very quickly dying, but it's not dead yet. Jared's like, okay, see if you can get a tow truck out here. I'm going to go take care of the deer. And she's like, what, you're going to kill it? And he's like, no, I'm going to bring it to its mother so it can die surrounded with someone it loves. So it goes off. 5 minutes later, he's like, yeah, I found the mother. It died. It's peaceful. It's all set now. But by the way, while I was taking that walk out there, I think you should follow me. I was able to track. There's a farm just up ahead. So she's like, what do you mean there's a farm ahead? Like, I can't see or hear a farm at all. And he's like, oh, I have super zombie powers. I can smell it. So they get up to a clearing, and they see this farm through some binoculars, and sitting in the barn is 2 Patriot missiles that are priced at $3 million a piece. And it's just like, okay, so this is a bit outside of what we were expecting, but we found it. And that's the issue. It just leaves off with the thing of like, they've got missiles. This is a weird first issue. It was a lot more brutal than I expected, especially because the cover style is done in a completely different way than the interiors. I think Darwin Cook actually does the cover art. Yeah, and it's not matching the inside at all, but it's weirdly brutal. It's very dark. I'm into it. It's just not what I was expecting at all. So, yeah, I'll go ahead and say this one is a strong opening. I'll give it an 8. I think, you know what? Even 8.5. I'll go with an 8.5. I think it's got me interested in the characters enough that despite the fact it's a property I know absolutely nothing about, it's got me hooked. And I want to see what more can GI Zombie do? What kind of interesting situations can they put him in? So, yeah, check it out next time. Batman number 33, written by Scott Snyder, art by Greg Capullo. So this is the end of the 0-year saga, arc, endurance test, whatever you want to call it. Last issue, we had Batman guessing where Riddler was, and he turned out to be right, but then he got caught into a trap. This issue picks up with exactly where we left off. A bunch of his drones are tracking Batman, and he's just like, well, we're here for the final game. And Batman's like, dude, bombs are being dropped on the city if I don't stop you. Just like, you have the chance to do something right here. And he's like, no, but I'm going to give you 12 riddles. And if you solve all of them, then I will give you what you want. And Batman's like, we both know this game is rigged. There's not enough time. The jets are going to come in. Like, this isn't going to work. And Riddler's like, well, riddle me this, Batman. So then we go back outside, and Gordon meets back up with Lucius Fox. He's like, hey, did you get anything through the communication channels? And he's just like, nope, Riddler's got it all locked down, but Batman, I guess, went and go found him. And Gordon's like, well, all right, all of our trust is in Batman. And he's like, all right, those jets are flying overhead. I need to figure out a way to signal them to let them know not to bomb us. So I'm going to go off and do that. Lucius, I need you to figure out a way to interrupt his communication stuff. Okay, just figure out a way to do that. You're going to need a big old piece of metal, though. So we get all the Riddler riddles, like a few of them here. I'm not going to go through them, but he basically is just like, oh, yeah, come on, Batman, give me an answer. And Batman pauses for a minute, looking around at the drones, and Riddler's like, oh, come on, you got to give something, and you only got like 10 minutes left. And Batman's like, oh, it's a louse. That was the name of the first one. And like, he goes off explaining exactly why it's a louse, which is obviously for the reader's sake, but in the moment, like, it takes at least a full minute to say everything he's saying. So one of the lasers goes out, and it allows Batman to move some more. Outside, we see Gordon scaling up the side of a building using like vines and stuff in order to get to wherever he's going. Back with Batman, he gets another riddle. It's a bee, so it once again gets to the next spot. And every time Riddler's trying to do like some in-between, like, oh, well, Batman, did you know this? And Batman's like, shut up, keep going, give me the next riddle. So Gordon gets up to this room with a bunch of paint and stuff in it, and he looks out the window and sees the jets are flying by. He's like, ah, crap, I'm out of time. I need to signal them somehow that Batman's okay. A Batman signal. So back with Riddler, he gets another riddle, and Batman, they're just having a stare down. The jets are like about to drop their stuff, and all of a sudden Batman notices the drones just all of a sudden go a little bit staticky. So Batman says, oh, the answer is a blade. And Riddler's like, well, let's see. And he puts in the answer to see if the lasers go off, but wouldn't you know it, he was wrong. It's not a blade. The correct answer was a knot. And he was like, yes, you see, all my riddles followed a theme. They're impossible riddles throughout history. And the last one was the Gordian knot, which you got wrong. And he was like, no, because to solve the Gordian knot, Alexander the Great used a blade. And Batman just starts walking through the lasers. And Riddler's like, my drones should be firing on you, but they're not. And I'm wondering what's up. And so Batman grabs hold of Riddler and just like, yeah, I saw your drones like freak out for a second. We took down your communication stuff. You've got nothing. I've just cut through your entire defenses. Get it? It's a metaphor. And we see Gordon is with a giant spotlight that he drew a bat symbol on, making the first bat signal. And Lucius used the giant penny in order to boost the signal to get the communications thing down. So Batman punches Riddler out, and he's like, haha, Gordon's managed to signal the jets. I'm buying just enough time here, but I need control of the city again. I beat you, Riddler. Tell me what it is. And he's like, ho, you think you beat me, but check this out. And he tears open his shirt, and on there is an electrode. And I'll be honest, I don't entirely understand what the hell Riddler is talking about here, but he says, like, in order for the city to get its electricity back, you need to fire electricity through this electrode, but it needs to also be hooked up to a human heartbeat. So it would take like 1,000 volts of energy to do that. And Batman's like, all right, fine. And he rips the electrode off of Riddler. And Riddler's like, oh, geez, man, you're really going to do it? That's crazy. And Batman just punches him in the face again. So we get a few things of the jets making another go-around, being like, okay, well, we see the bat signal, but our orders are still to drop bombs, so we're just going to go ahead and do that. And so Batman goes down into the electrical room. He puts the electrode on his chest. He grabs some big-ass cables, and then all of a sudden, 1,000 jolts of electricity go through him. And we see it says, reboot, no signal, and it seems like he has failed. And everything goes black for 2 full pages, until all of a sudden, Alfred is there, doing CPR to bring him back to life. And the city is all lit up. The jet fighters are like, oh, okay, we don't need to drop bombs then. So they fly off, and everyone's happy. And Batman's like, Alfred, I told you to get out of the city. What's up, man? And he's like, I never left the city. I told you. I will always be there to patch you up. So then we cut to 1 month later. Bruce Wayne's giving a talk saying like, yeah, Gotham, Zero, metaphors, a whole bunch of inspirational talk about how we can do better in this city and whatnot. And he tells like, yeah, I'm taking over Wayne Enterprises. Lucius Fox is going to be my number one dude. He's in charge of things here. The newly appointed Commissioner Gordon comes up and shakes Bruce's hand. And it's like, yeah, what are we doing about Riddler? It's like, well, we normally would send his kind to Blackgate, but they don't know how to deal with him there. So we put him in the Arkham Asylum. Hopefully we won't have to send too many crazy people there. Womp womp. And then apparently Gordon went to the coat check earlier on, and he went for his coat, but his smokes weren't in it. And he was like, that's weird. And then he checked the coat, and he's like, wait a minute, this isn't the coat that I got for being, on the take or whatever earlier on during that dogfight like 17 issues ago. This is a different coat. That is the exact same model of coat, but new and fresh. And Bruce is like, well, maybe it's time for something new and fresh, let go of the past and whatnot. So Alfred comes over to Batman, or Bruce, and he's like, hey, that girl you dated at the beginning of one of the issues, Julie Madison? She's here. She would like to talk to you. And he's like, Alfred, you don't understand. I can't be with anybody. I'm not going to stop. This is my life from now on. And Alfred's like, but maybe not. Give it a try. And he's like, look, Alfred, I'll leave it up to you. If you want me to have a drink with her, so be it. And we see him go back over to Julie and introduce Bruce, and they sit down and talk, and she's like, oh yeah, I just moved into the city and I saw you on TV, and I just had to reconnect and whatnot. And we see them going out for drinks, and she has a baby, and they're going to see movies at the theater, and they have 3 kids, and Bruce has got a mustache, and he turns to Alfred and says, thank you, my old friend. And Alfred says, of course, Master Wayne. But then it turns out to all just be an imagination of Alfred. And as Julie's like, oh, is Bruce available? And Alfred says, oh, I'm so sorry. He's spoken for, as we see Batman over the city that he now protects. There was also a little ditty in there where Bruce was about to do electroshock therapy, and he thought, nah, I don't want to, that's not what I want to do. It ties in thematically, but it's its own separate thing. Anyway, it's a fine issue. It's a fine finale to Zero Year. I remember liking it more on my first read through. This time around, it does the riddles drag. There's no good way to do a riddle, especially in a pulse pounding sort of moment of oh, you got to do it super quick. Because if you got to stop to explain the riddle, then it's okay, tick tock, man, come on, move it on. Everything on, though, it's just, it's a love letter to Batman. They just pull on all the little continuity things of look, the giant penny was a thing, and look, there's the first bat signal, and oh, here's this other stuff. So it's a fun time. This arc did just go on a bit too long. You want to see modern Batman stuff. The origin story here is a bit overdone. So beyond that, I think I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 7.5. It's still wildly enjoyable in terms of comics as a whole, but for Batman, I kind of just wanted it to do more modern stuff, more current day stuff. So I'm sure we'll get back to that, but Zero Year is finally over. Batman and Robin number 33, written by Peter Tomasi and Patrick Gleason. So the previous issue was Robin Rises Omega, not issue number 32, specifically Robin Rises Omega. It is unskippable. And in it, Robin gets taken to Apocalypse. He's dead, but his body gets taken to Apocalypse. And Batman says, I'm definitely going to the Justice League. This issue picks up exactly there where he's just looking at everyone. He's roided out right now. He's like, is anybody going to tell me I can't? Let's hear it. Aquaman, you got something to say? And Aquaman's like, yeah, bro, we defend the Earth. We can't go off on personal missions. We can't just go to Apocalypse. And he's like, okay, you want it to be a thing? Parademons just invaded Earth again. That's the second time. We need to go to Apocalypse and take care of that now. And Lex Luthor's like, okay, but clearly you're just making that up after the fact. This is about Robin. And he's like, shut it, Lex. So Cyborg says, look, we'll figure out a plan to deal with Darkseid, but we can't just storm in there. We got to actually think about that. And he puts his hand on Batman's shoulder. Batman clicks something in his utility belt, and Cyborg just gets shocked in place. And he activates the teleporter tech to go up to the Watchtower. And immediately Shazam's like, well, I'll go get him. I'll knock some sense into him. Wonder Woman grabs him by the ankle with her lasso and just like, dude, you've been part of the League for like 15 minutes. You need to chill because Batman will knock your lights out. And Frankenstein sees all this happening. He just turns and walks away. And there's like, Frankenstein, where are you going, man? He's like, anywhere but here. Bye. So up in the watchtower, Batman arrives. He goes over into his closet or whatever. Voice recognition, he says his name. And inside is the Hellbat armor, which is very impressive looking. And Batman says, initiate the Hellbat release. And it says denied. And so he gives his secret override, which is just that little disapproving tisk. And at this point, the Justice League shows back up in the watchtower. And he immediately goes off. He's just like, look, you guys are saying we can't go off and play God, but we literally have Wonder Woman, who is a god, and also Shazam, who is the power of like all of these gods. So why in the hell should I not be able to go back and save my own son's life? And he basically just keeps going saying, or Aquaman goes off saying like, you know, Darkseid, he's a bigger threat. You can't just run in there for the wrong reasons. We got to take this slowly. And he's like, if Mara was in there, would you be hesitating? And he's like, that's not fair. And Batman's like, yeah, exactly. I'm going. I'm taking the Hellbat armor. And Wonder Woman's like, oh, the Hellbat armor, Batman. The one that everyone in the Justice League helped you design. Superman forged it in the sun. And then the rest of us did something. And all of us helped you. And the reason we did it is so that we could protect you. Because you don't have any powers. This is all for your safety. And so Cyborg is the one who's able to override the override. And he says, no, I'm not going to do it. Captain Cold puts a freeze gun to Batman's head. And he's like, do you really think that was a good idea? And he takes the freeze gun, aims it at Cyborg, pulls the trigger. Immediately the rest of the League's just on top of him as he's like struggling to reach some buttons. And Batman's like, okay, all right, get your hands off me. I'm done fighting. I'm tired. I'm going to leave now. And he just bails. So over on Apocalypse, Glorious Godfrey returns with the crystal and the sarcophagus of Robin. And he's like, oh, see, I keep my promises. I brought the Chaos Crystal here to you. And mysterious person he's talking to. He's like, what do you mean promise? It was command to go get that. Also, what's with the casket? I didn't ask for that. It's like, oh, well, it has an energy signature close to that of the Chaos Crystals. So we thought we should bring it along as well. And we see that it is the son of Darkseid, Calabac, who is asking for this. And he's like, oh, okay. Well, if it's got the same energy, we can use it to charge our Chaos Cannon. So that's what they're doing. We go back to Earth and Bruce, a bunch of fireflies going around as he's at the grave of Damian. He starts digging it up. And in doing so, he bashes down the tombstone, like the monument there, kicks it into pieces and just like collapses to the ground. And this is where Superman shows up. He's like, hey, Bruce, sorry I wasn't there earlier. And he's like, yeah, look, if this is about damages to the Watchtower, I'll pay for it. Don't worry about it. And he's like, nah, it's not what this is about. I'm sorry I wasn't there. And he's like, you weren't there. And like, you know what? Maybe you come down here. Stop flying over me like a god. And Superman lands and they just have a little heart-to-heart for a moment. And he's like, look, I know it's selfish. I accept the League's position. Like, I'm not going to do that. I must be crazy for thinking I could go take on Darkseid. And Superman's like, I get it, man. You're a grieving father. It makes sense. But, like, if you need anything, just shout. I'll be here. And so Superman flies back off. Bruce goes inside, goes down the Batcave, gets a suit on. And we see that he's assembled the family. So Batgirl, Red Robin, and Red Hood are all here, along with Alfred. And he's like, great, thanks for showing up. Let's get to work. So, clearly they're still doing it. I like it. I don't know. I'm just weird about this arc because we went through the entirety of the arc of him getting over it, you know? We went through the entirety of him grieving, accepting, moving on. And if this were just a thing about, like, rescuing his body, so be it. But he's specifically saying, I can bring my son back, which just... I don't know. I guess it is a thing that Batman is not good about processing grief, a la his entire goddamn thing. But it's weird that it pivoted back this quickly for me. I feel like this should have been something that took some more time. Other than that, it's a fine issue. It looks great. Everything's fine. I really like how Batman plays against the League there. And it doesn't pretend like he's able to stand up to all of them, especially because there hasn't been any planning time. He's just kind of like really off his rocker right now, and I appreciate that. So I'm going to give this one I'll give it a flat 7. Yeah, it just feels like a flat 7 to me. It's good, it's just not great. It's a strange direction, but I think I'm going to appreciate it more once we actually do get to Apocalypse and start showing some badass Batman moments. Catwoman number 33, written by Ann Nocenti, art by Patrick Olliffe, whatever it is. Be prepared for the most incoherent recap of the book ever, because I swear to God, this entire arc has just been an endurance test. Last issue, Catwoman won the race or something. She got up to the front and found out, like, oh, it was all just a trick. Roulette tricked them somehow. So this issue picks up with Catwoman just being like, she fixed the race. This is now a matter for my honor. I have to get Roulette. Someone tell me where she is. So we go over to Alice Tesla's workshop, and she's like, hey, I found all this information on all of these guys, including Mirror Master and Swindle and Vice and all that. And Catwoman scratches her screen and is just like, give me Roulette. And she's like, okay. Well, this is a recurring thing for this issue. I still don't understand why. So they're saying like, oh, remember we were thinking a gas explosion for like those lights at Roulette's beach party before? Well, Roulette was gaslighting you. And Catwoman says, what's gaslighting? And I'm not going to explain it, but she's like, wow, I've never heard of that before. But yeah, let's do the same to her. So we then cut over to a park and we get that private investigator who was looking up about the rich person and like how she died. Turns out she went to Europe for 9 months, had a baby that was illegitimate, and the thought process was that they were trying to prove that one of her own kids did not kill her. And I'm talking like the legitimate ones. However, because of the coroner's reports and like everything else that was found, not only did the daughter poison her with arsenic, but her son also poisoned her, or not poisoned her, shot her with a shotgun. So no matter what, her kids kill her. And that is the opposite of what the private investigator was trying to find out. So he's like, well, that's all I got. And he's telling all this to Catwoman because she's blackmailing him or something. And he's just like, yeah, well, you know, I've got my person who hired me to do all this. I gotta go back to them now. And we then go to Hunt Stone's mansion. Do you remember Hunt Stone? Because I sure as hell didn't. Turns out it's the dude who apparently had his kid kidnapped at the beginning of the race, and that was the whole reason that Catwoman was doing any of this. So he has the files on the rich woman and like what actually happened, and he throws them into the fire. And Catwoman says, it was all you. You gaslit me. That's your name now. Gaslight. And he's like, yep, that's me. So they start getting into a little bit of a fight as I swear to God his hair's on fire, but he does absolutely nothing about it. Like the entire time he's just using like guns and whips and whatever, but like his hair is definitely on fire. Anyway, turns out his whole thing is he was actually the son of the illegitimate kid from the rich person. And he thought that because the illegitimate kid was left all the money afterwards. And he thought that the will was changed and then the illegitimate son killed his mother. When in actuality, the opposite happened. But he burned the file without even looking at it to see whether or not that was the case. And Catwoman's like, haha, you just burned all of your proof. And now that nice, sweet girl who actually cares about her ancestors is going to be able to sue you. And she's like, oh, poo on me. Well, what can I do in order to make you not call the police? And she's like, tell me everything you know about Roulette. And apparently Roulette is super OCD and has to do everything extremely routine. So every day she wakes up, goes down to her pool. She does exactly the same amount of reps on a machine at the exact same weight. Then she does a lap in her pool at the exact same time. And they keep an eye on her for a whole day in order to get a routine. And then Catwoman just comes in as she starts doing her reps and just like adds 10 pounds. And Roulette's like, this is wrong. Everything's wrong. Oh God, what's happening? So she gets up like looking terrified, and then she hops in the pool, and Catwoman throws in some sort of robot that like holds her down and pins her to the bottom of the pool. And the narration is like, was that just a shadow, Roulette, or was it something more? Meanwhile, it's very clearly a like huge tentacle monster with like giant robot tentacles. I don't understand why they're saying it's a shadow. So they hop in an elevator. Catwoman disrupts the elevator enough to like give him some bruises. And then Roulette's like, this is the worst day ever. I'm losing my mind here, but I have to go keep up a meeting with this gangster person. So she hops in a car. Catwoman is posing as the driver. So she speeds as fast as humanly possible, crashes into a lamppost, and Roulette gets out of the car to go confront the driver, but the driver's gone. So she walks into the building. Apparently the gangster she's talking to is like, oh, we don't do business with people like you. So she, like, two people show up that were threatening the guy, and Roulette's like, these aren't my guys. I don't know who these people are. So she beats the crap out of them. And then Catwoman shows up and says, haha, it was me all along, Roulette. I've been making your day miserable. And they fight for a bit until Catwoman gets her down and says, I'm going to keep on making every day of your life just as miserable with all these minor inconveniences unless you tell me everything. And as far as I can tell, the only thing she does is get a whole bunch of information on Roulette, Mirror Master, Trip Winter, the stone guy from before. She just has files on them. She puts them into her secret vault. She writes down a note saying, don't get cold, which I guess means in this setting of don't, be bitter and awful. It's like, have fun with it. And then she closes the vault. Three sounds too high. Here's the thing, like, independently, none of these issues are the worst, but like collectively, I'm losing my goddamn mind. I hate this run so much because nothing feels like we're actually making any progress with this character. Like, nothing is happening, and yet it's so confusing at the same time. So overall, yeah, I'm giving this one just like a 3. And maybe it's getting the brunt of like what the past couple arcs have been, but like, I hate this. I hate this so much. Luckily, I think we've only got one more issue of Nocenti. Maybe the Future's End is also her, but regardless, we're almost done. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, and I look forward to it every day. But this is a 3. Superman number 33, written by Geoff Johns, art by John Romita Jr. So last issue, we had Superman meeting up with a new superhero as they beat up a robot together in the middle of town, and he introduces himself as Ulysses, and he's like, hey, I'm from Earth. I thought my planet was destroyed, but I'm not alone. Ain't that cool? So we pick up this issue with Perry White showing a newspaper which shows the fight happening, and it says, who is Superman's partner? And Perry's like, this story is great. If only we published it. And he starts tearing into like the whole writer's room here, and he's like, we need more information to be able to publish this. All we know is that Superman punched a robot with some other guy. What else do we have on him? And he turns to Lois and just being like, hey, I'm Lois Lane. I managed to get myself invited into other places so I can get information. I'll find out, Chief. And then we cut to, I don't even know her first name, but her last name's Winters. And she's like, and I'll do like the sneaky stuff, and I'll like see what I can ask the hard questions. And then we cut to this last guy here, whose name is Troop. And apparently he's doing something about like how the city and like environment stuff is going on. So he says like, oh, well, apparently the Global Warming Commission said that during their 1-hour robot fight, it was worth the emissions of an entire week of gridlock cars. And so Steve Lombard chimes in and says, well, maybe if Superman has a partner, he'd cut it down to 30 minutes instead of an hour. And Perry's like, that's a great idea, Lombard. You run with that. I want a full story in 10. And then Jimmy Olsen pops in saying, what can I do, Chief? And Perry just says, get me photos of Spider-Man. Like, he's acting like that. So as he goes to leave the room and, like, whips the team into shape, Clark Kent pops his head in. He's just like, hey, everyone, sorry I'm here, because he's not part of the newspaper at this point. And Perry's like, hey, let me go talk to you. So they go out of the room for a while, and Clark is like, look, hey, I'm not here about my old job. I need some information. And he pulls out an old Daily Planet paper about the Ulysses Research Lab. And Perry's like, oh, I wrote that story. That was one of my first. And there's a full page that is practically like a panel that is 5 paragraphs of text. And he basically just explains there was a woman, her name was something or another, Margaret Knight. She opened up this thing. They were trying to figure out how to travel great distances. They realized they couldn't cross the universe all at once, so they tried breaking into different dimensions to cut down the time. And then there was an accident at the lab, and some other stuff happened, and they buried the whole place. So Clark's trying to get information. He's like, look, I'll give you all the information about this story because I researched it. I remember it all. However, if I give it to you, you have to let us publish the story. And then if we publish the story, you come back for your old job. And Clark's like, all right, well, show me what you got. So they go down to some old files. They start looking through stuff. And Clark pulls out a photo of a couple of people, Peter and Bridget Quinn. And he's just like, oh, where'd you get that photo, man? That's crazy. But yeah, no, they came from the Navy's like nuclear program or whatever. But yeah, we can find more about them. And then all of a sudden there's a murmuring outside the file room. And as they step outside, Ulysses is there. And he looks at Clark and he's like, oh, there you are. And immediately Perry's like, bro, why do you know Superman's new partner? And he's like, I'm doing an interview with him. Come on, Ulysses, let's go. And immediately Perry's like, he knows that guy's name. That's good reporting. Everyone be more like Clark Kent. So they go back to Clark's apartment. And Ulysses doesn't understand secret identities. And Clark's like, look, just call me Clark when I'm dressed like this. We blend in. Like, I'm not from this planet. I'm even more alien than you. Just please try to understand. Also, what happened to that dude you were fighting? Like the robot guy. And it's like, oh, well, he's in a prison on Stryker's Island. And he's in hibernation. We have to make sure he doesn't get any of my dimensional crystals. And it's like, yeah, I don't think those exist here on Earth. So we're probably good. Anyway, I've got some leads about you that I want to go search on. I need you to stay here and not cause any trouble, okay? Seriously, don't leave. And so he leaves Ulysses alone in his apartment. He goes out to where the research lab was. He unburies it and starts investigating underneath. Ulysses is looking around Clark's apartment. He sees pictures of Mom, Pa, Ken. He compares it to pictures of his own parents. He's like, oh, okay, I get it. We're like birds of a feather here. So he goes and raids Clark's wardrobe to get dressed as like a normal person. And then he just starts walking down the street as this ridiculously large man with a ridiculously long blonde hair. So Clark's looking around. He finds some more information. He calls up Perry. Meanwhile, Ulysses, who was going by Neil, because I do believe that was his given name, everyone's just like, oh, well, hey there, handsome. He's like, my name is not handsome. It is Neil. Hello. And so he goes to a food truck. Food truck guy's like, oh, you looking for something, buddy? He's like, my name is not Buddy. It is Neil. Hello. And the guy's like, okay, well, here, have some of this. And he passes him a big thing of food. And Neil just starts walking away with it. And he's like, bro, you got to pay for that. When all of a sudden, there's an explosion down the street. And it looks like some like toy soldiers. They're painted green and everything, come to life, and they're just blowing stuff up. And Ulysses is like, oh no, my fellow humans are going to be hurt. I have to help them. So he flies into the scene. He gets shot down out of the sky. But then he lands in front of the people the soldiers before they can hurt the people. And he's like, I will bring peace to this world too, whatever's wrong with it. And he blasts the soldiers away with whatever vision he's got. It's blue. So at that point, he's on the phone. Clark's on the phone with Perry. Perry mentions there's an explosion downtown, and he sees the long blonde hair. He's like, well, that's Superman's new friend for sure. So Clark immediately just zooms out, heads back into town. He helps with the fight, and he's like, bro, I told you to stay in my house. And he's like, these people were being threatened or whatnot. I had to help. Why is Earth so violent, man? This isn't like my home planet. And Superman's like, look, I got to clean this place up real quick, and you need to come with me. We need to go find something. And he's like, what? Where are we going? So they fly a few cities away, and they land, and Superman's like, look, there was an accident at the lab. That's why your parents sent you away. But the lab didn't explode. They managed to stop it from exploding. Your parents survived. And they knock on the door to this place, and two people come out. It's Peter and Bridget. And he's like, Mom, Dad, it's me. It's Neil, your fellow human. It's like, oh, Neil. And they all embrace, have a big hug, and he's so happy to be home. Clark thinks about Mom and Pa Kent and looks a little bit sad, but still happy that Neil gets his thing. When then we see the mysterious hooded figure watching in a different room, says, oh, well, you have to be alone for now, Clark. For now. So, yeah, that's the issue. Not a lot happens. It's kind of just a middle-paced filler issue. It's not bad. I don't think it's poorly written. I do think the art style is immediately worse than last issue was, and that's not saying much because last issue didn't look that amazing either. It's a definite downgrade. I'm not going to be a fan of the art for pretty much this entire story, but so what? Overall, I think I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 6.5. Because there wasn't that many big moments and the art was already bad, I'm negative on it, but I can recognize that it is still a nice little story showing the similarities between Ulysses and Superman and how they're going to continue with that moving down the road. So 6.5 it is. Red Lanterns number 33, written by Charles Soule, art by Alessandro Vitti. So last issue, Atrocitus made his move. He poisoned the Blood Lake. He destroyed the Red Lantern power battery. Guy Gardner sent Supergirl away saying, yeah, nah, you got to get back to your own book, do your own thing. And also, what's his name? Rancor is still super crazy and evil. So we cut to a bar out in the middle of Sector 1818. Guy's having himself a drink. And all of a sudden a voice from the side says, hey, pour one for me too. And we see it's John Stewart of the Green Lanterns. And Guy's like, hey, John. And he's like, why are you surprised? You're the one who called me here. He's like, I didn't think you'd show up. So they sit down, they have a drink. He's like, yeah, I thought about calling Hal first. And John's like, bro, you were going to call Hal before me. We went through so much together. And he realizes the Guy's just messing with him. And he's like, yeah, all right. So they down their drinks. And then Guy's like, all right, to business. I need your help. And we cut over to Yzmalt and see everything is ruined. The battery's destroyed. The statues are gone. Everything's just awful. Bleeze is looking over Rancor as he's inside of a cage, just hissing at her. And she looks over at the judge, the new Red Lantern, just like, hey, you can tap into people's brains. Can you tap into his and make him less crazy? And she's like, I could, but I'm not going to. I'm here to just watch. I'm here for me. And Bleeze is like, God, you suck. And so she turns to Rancor and is just like, you gave up everything for me. I'm going to give up everything for you. I will save you, I promise. So we go to their big ship, which is still powered. It does still have energy. Skylux is browsing the entirety of the universe sector by sector to find Atrocitus and Dexter, just looking for their energy signatures. And just like, yeah, this is a waste of time. This is stupid. We need to go out and do something. And so Skylux scans his home sector, to which Zilius is like, bro, don't do that. Don't go back to your own little personal tragedies. We're bigger than that. Just take a quick look and move on. And so Zilius says he's got to go take over for Bleeze and watching Rancor. So he heads out of the ship as Skylux gets a ping on his scan of his sector. And he's like, oh my gosh, I think it's them. So we don't see what happens immediately. John says, hey, the other Green Lanterns, they ask about you a lot, and I don't know what to tell them because I don't know if you want us sharing that you're a Red Lantern or what's going on with that, but why did you do it, man? Why are you red? It's all about revenge. What do you need revenge for? And Guy's like, I need revenge on myself. And John's like, that's stupid. That's a stupid argument. You're dumb. So Guy points out hey, how are you doing nowadays? Because you keep on looking over at that girl over there that looks a hell of a lot like Fatality. Did something happen to your girlfriend? And John's like, oh, I don't know. Did something happen to Ice back on Earth? And he's like, no, don't make this about me. Look, you have something going on right now. Doesn't it make you mad? Isn't that something that angers you? And he's like, maybe it does, but it's not constructive. I don't focus on it. It's not something I need to do. And Guy's like, all right, whatever. I'm going to go to the bathroom. Be right back. So Bleeze takes a rock into her wrist, just puncturing her femoral artery, and she puts the wrist that's bleeding into Rancor's cage, and just like, here, Rancor, take my blood, it's what you need to get back to normal. And Zilia sees this like, what in the hell are you doing, man? Get away. And she's like, no, it's what he needs. But of course he goes absolutely crazy, like tries to basically kill her as her wrist is stuck in there. Zilius opens up another entry into the cage, blasts him with some ring energy, and Lisa's like, well, I'm just trying to help you. Why won't you let me help you? And Zilli's like, all right, this is clearly going nowhere. Skalax, I'm going to need some help. Get out of the ship. Come here and help. But Skalax isn't answering. And we see where Skalax is. He went to his home sector, and he looks over and he sees where like a major city once was is now a blood ocean, along with a giant spiky looking church with the Red Lantern symbol on it. And all of a sudden, a giant Death Star construct comes up and attacks him. And he's like, this is impossible. And then Atrocitus, wearing, as far as I can describe, cult robes, is just flying up in the air. He's like, nothing is impossible through me, Skalax. And he has like 7 other Red Lanterns around him. So Skalax gets captured, and he's like, awesome, we did it. Hey, Dexter, go ahead and kill Skalax. And Skalax is like, whoa, 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 whoa. This is my home planet. And like where you set up was right at the base of where the guys who like took everything away from me were at. Did you kill them? And Frost is like, yeah, of course I did. Like, I got vengeance for you. Even if you are my prodigal lantern who betrayed me when I needed him most, I still believe in revenge. I still believe in eye for an eye. And so I took his life. And Skalax just immediately, like, folds his hands in prayer. He's like, oh, great Atrocitus. I knew that it was a sign. We were scanning for you, and then I saw you here, and I knew you must have killed this guy for me. So I didn't tell the other people. I had to come see it for myself. I understand. Please let me serve you once more. I beg you. And Atrocitus is like, wow, that's pathetic. And Dexter still wants to kill him, but he's like, hold on. I can use him. So we go back to the bar. And John's just sitting there, and immediately he gets accosted by some random guys saying like, oh, you lanterns saying shit about us. And he's just like, no, I wasn't, but now I'm gonna. So they get into a fight. He starts throwing punches like crazy. Guy comes back out from the back, sees that Lantern Stewart needs some help, so he crashes a bottle over one of the guys' heads, and it's just an all-out bar fight. So we see after the fight, John is like, you told those guys that I said something about them to get them to fight me, right? And he's like, yeah, I just wanted to show you that you got a little bit of anger in you. And sometimes we just need like little fights like this to let it out, not big things where the whole universe is at stake. And he's like, yeah, all right, look, guy, I know you need help, but I can't get the Green Lantern Corps to help you out. Like, they're just going to think it's Red Lantern problems. Now, if Atrocitus is back in charge, if he does manage to beat you, then yeah, we can step in then because he'll be a threat. But as long as you're actually the one in charge here, we can't do anything to help. And he's like, yeah, all right, well, thanks. So Atrocitus is like, back on the planet, he's like, hey, I made a new blood lake. I had to poison yours. Sorry about that, but it had to happen. And Skalax is like, nah, man, it's cool. Guy Gardner's been freaking out over the 9 rings that you made and sent out into space. And he's like, yeah, has he been? Well, I want you to pass this along to him, okay? I want you to let this be a thing. And Atrocitus raises his arms, and all of a sudden, like 100, 200, 300 different Red Lantern rings just fly out of the new blood ocean and take off into the sky. So we're getting a new Red Lantern Corps, and they're all loyal to Atrocitus, and bad things are going to happen. So I'm down for this. I think this is good. It's nice to have a little downbeat issue with Guy and Hal catching back up again. Or not Hal, John catching back up again, because it's been a while. Like, the Green Lantern Corps books started with them as a team, and then they split it up, but it's nice to have that coming back at least a little bit here. So, and yeah, Atrocitus' plan, like, it doesn't feel like it's particularly well seeded, but I'm okay with that because it's Atrocitus. Like, he's the guy who made the whole Red Lantern Corps. It just feels like he should be able to do some crazy stuff like this. So I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 7.5. I enjoyed it enough. I think it is just shy of that 8. It didn't really do anything big enough that it felt like it earned that, but 7.5 is still nothing to sneeze at. So, very good. Aquaman number 33, written by Geoff Parker, art by Paul Pelletier. So last issue, Aquaman was accosted by a new creature that can control other sea creatures named the Chimera. So this issue picks up, and all the sea creatures are still attacking him, and he's like, yeah, you can't control them. I'm the one in charge, and like, I know what you think about them, that they're only food for you. Like, that's the only time you'll kill them, but now you will be food for them. And he starts looking into Aquaman's mind as Aquaman tries fighting back against them. He's like, oh, when you use them, it's for the greater good. When I use them, I'm suddenly evil. That doesn't seem fair. So he looks into Aquaman's mind, and he sees all of these memories of the land and like Justice League and whatnot. And he's like, wait a minute, you're from the land? How in the hell can you be the king? And then all of a sudden, some weird light thing happens. Chimera passes out, as does Aquaman. And as Aquaman comes to sometime later, we see the royal guard or whatever comes out. And they're just like, oh, it's the king, my lord, what happened? And he's just like, yeah, I don't know. Look, what's going on at the capital? What's up? What's in Atlantis? And it's like, oh, well, your wife captured all the people who were conspiring to kill you. And she's like, excuse me, that's news to me. Can we please like focus on that for a minute? So we go back to Atlantis and we see all the people that they fought down in like the depths or whatever they were called are currently locked up in the prison coves. And Mira's talking to Tula, and Tula's like, yeah, well, I could punch all of them in the face if you want. And Mira's like, yeah, look, you've done plenty, but like, why are you on my side? Like, you know that we hate your brother, Ocean Master. Like, we had to go up against him. What's up? Why are you with me? And she's like, I'm on the side of peace. And you guys seem to want to keep the peace, and I'm cool with that. That's the whole reason I fight, is so that other people don't have to. And Aquaman comes up, finally gives his wife a hug, and he's just like, oh man, it's been too long. So immediately his advisors are like, hey, these people were planning on assassinating you. Atlantean law says we have to deal with them swiftly and very, very harshly. And Aquaman's like, okay, we'll get to that in a minute, but I need to talk to the science guys first. So can you go get me the science guys? And he's just like, yeah, totally awesome. And then all of a sudden, a giant sea quake starts happening. Like, all the buildings start rumbling. A couple of the doors break loose, and some of the prisoners escape, and all the hecticness of it. But they all get beaten back down into their cages and everything like that as it starts coming down. But all the prisoners that they captured start complaining, saying, it's because of him. It's because of the king. Every time, since he showed up, the sea quakes have started getting worse and worse. Like, it's all thanks to him. It's all because of him. And Aquaman's like, is that what people really think of me? Do they think I'm responsible for frickin' sea quakes? And we see Volko still inside one of the cages is like, yes, they think that, and they're right. But after all the lies I've told you, you would never believe me. And he's not talking to Aquaman, he's just talking to the audience. So we go up to Amnesty Bay. Bunch of beautiful day, everyone's on the beach, they're playing in the water, and then all of a sudden, Chimera just comes up out of the water, a la the scene from X-Men. And a dog starts barking at him, and Chimera looks down at it and just kills the dog. Everyone goes running. And he's like, where is the king? I can't feel his mind in the sea, so he must be up here. And Chimera catches an image of his own reflection. And he flashes back to the doctors doing all the work on him of like, oh yes, he has these abilities for camouflage, but like if he really pushes it, he may be able to make an even more convincing camouflage of like blending into his environment. And we see Chimera's skin rip open, and inside is his original human form. That looks like, what was his name? Coombs, I think. But he's naked, and the cop comes up. He's like, I don't know what the hell's going on, but you're under arrest. And Chimera like just makes himself some clothing. He uses as part of his camouflage. And as this cop keeps threatening him, Chimera shapeshifts his hand and just stabs a guy multiple times in like the head and chest. So he manages to escape with nobody else knowing any of the difference. And he's like, yes, camouflage, good. So down in Atlantis, they're cleaning up after the sea quake, and Aquaman explains about the Chimera. He's like, yeah, it was like taking control. It tried to peek into my mind or try to control me, but like I managed to see into it as well. It has part of the brain of the Caraquan, that thing that we fought like 6 issues ago, and that's why like I felt that connection to it. So that's going on. Royal Guard comes up, just like, hey, Aquaman, Triton base. Chimera broke out. You already know about that. But Stephen Shin was injured, and he was brought up to land to a naval base. And you told us to keep track of him, so I'm letting you know he is there now. So in Amnesty Bay, the actual town, Chimera's just been attacking people off in side alleys, asking where Aquaman is, but nobody's giving him an answer because either they don't know or they won't tell. And we see him have a little flashback, thinking back to his human time of how he died. He was attacked by sharks and Aquaman saved him. And then all of a sudden, a dog starts barking at him again. He starts freaking out. We get Erica, the one cop who's super good buddies with Aquaman and Mera, and is just like, man, as if the day wasn't crazy enough. A cop was killed down on the beach, but now I get a call from Aquaman saying Stephen Shin is in the hospital and he wants me to meet her there. And immediately he hears Aquaman and he's just like, did you say the king? Where's the king? And it's like, we don't really give that information to tourists. And then he just starts shapeshifting and like, he has like tons of tentacles and whatnot. Erica immediately pulls her gun and just starts firing at this guy. Doesn't end up doing anything, just pisses him off a little bit. And so Chimera grabs hold of Erica and is able to read her mind enough to get and figure out where the naval base is. And it's in Boston. So apparently Chimera can either fly or he can jump real good. And he just soars off. So over at Boston Harbor, where the naval base, it's on a medical ship, Stephen Shin's visited by Aquaman. And Aquaman's like, hey man, I know that Triton is like an international thing, but like you guys were doing some skeevy stuff and I know about Chimera, so like what's that all about? And Shin explains like, yeah, he's got like all the different parts of different animals, including the brain of a Kaharaquan. It's something we thought we could control by putting in like an inhibitor chip, but unfortunately he attacked the scientists before we could put in the chip, so now he's operating on his own. But the weird thing is he has part human brain that remembers you saving him, but he also has part Kaharaquan brain that remembers you killing him. So he's going to keep coming after you because you are such a pivotal person in his life, and you just need to know about that. And so Aquaman's like, okay, that's weird, but hey, there's someone I want you to meet while you get recovered. I'll be back soon. But before Aquaman can leave, someone busts into Stephen Shin's room. Stephen looks up, he's like, that's him, that's the guy, he's camouflaged, but that's him. And we see that it is Chimera. He transforms back into his own thing, and he's like, yes, I'm here to meet my savior and my destroyer. And he lunges after Aquaman. It does a good job of selling the horror of Chimera, but I will say that he was left better in shadow. I don't mind the way he looks. It's not like hilarious, but it's also not menacing. I think it does a much better job when it's just left up to like the imagination of what he looks like. The fact that he can blend into like looking like a normal human being is also very powerful, and I think that also works. But he's just kind of not a scary looking villain. So the fact that all the horror elements are there of like this terrifying thing that just kills indiscriminately, but instead it's kind of just a goofy looking monster, it takes away just a little bit. But I like the way the story's going, and obviously we're setting up more long-term plots in terms of the conspirators and what they think of Aquaman and blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to give this one I'll give it a flat 7. I think it's good. It's not great. It's just another solid issue in the Aquaman run. The Flash number 33, written by Robert Venditti and Van Jensen, art by Brett Booth. So last issue, I mean, it was just a whole big thing of continuing the story. There's a guy who's taking other criminals' powers and then using them. So we open up in Central City Police Station, and they're talking about this killer, saying like, yeah, it was a crew of 6. 5 of them have been killed, so we think it has to be the 6th guy. His name is Nate Jones, and we gotta go figure out where he's at. And Barry stands up saying, oh, hey, I found some connections to some other cases that we want to talk about. And director things like, Barry, I swear to God, if you open another cold case, I will fire you. Sit your ass back down. And he sits down, and he's next to Detective Seaborn, who's like, kid, don't worry about it. I was the one who did this case back when it first happened, so this is a big deal to me. How about you tell me your theories about that later on? And he's like, oh, yeah, totally, awesome. So Barry walks outside the meeting room. Iris West is standing there just like, hey, I'm not here for anything like inside details for the mashup killer, as I have christened him, but Wally. I'm worried about him because he is hanging around with the wrong type of crowd. And I checked his Facebook and he was talking on messaging about like some kind of score. It's going to happen at like 3 p.m. today and only one of them can drive, and they drive a red hatchback. Could you help me out, like as a police person, just like figure out where he is and whatnot? And he's like, I'll do what I can. I'll do my very best there. And he's like, right, okay, thank you. And she gives him all the information. And he's like, all right, yeah. So Barry goes outside, talks to Detective Seaborn. And he's like, oh, okay, so you saying you found something regarding this case and how it might impact other things. And he's like, yeah, totally. So I was looking through all these old files, and everything has the same 6 sets of fingerprints. However, when we went to the most recent robberies, there was another set of fingerprints that didn't match any of those 6 sets. So I don't think that this is Jones. I think Jones is possibly still the target. I think he might be killed for his power set as well. So Seaborn is like, that's a solid thing. I like that. I'm stuck here at work, so how about you just text me the address of Jones's last address as soon as it comes in. Like, I've got a thing out on him. Just tell me when it comes in. And he's like, yeah, of course, I'll text you as soon as it comes in. So we cut to 7 years from now. We got the Future Flash stuff going on. I'm just going to cover it all at once here. It's spread throughout the issue. We see 7 years from now, Future Trickster is just walking down the street, not caring the world, when all of a sudden Flash tackles him, brings him up to the top of a bridge, and like dangles him over the edge. And he's like, Trickster, I know what you were about to do. You got little robots that look like money, and you were going to just, out in broad daylight, you're going to drop them in the bank's safety deposit box and then use them to rob the bank and carry out an entire vault with you. And you were going to do it in front of everybody in the middle of the day, so everyone knew the Trickster was the one who did it. And Trickster's like, all right, Flash, I have no idea how you knew any of that stuff, but you made one mistake, and that's not letting me drop off the stuff first. And he lets all the robots loose, and they start like flying around the city. And Trickster's like, you can't stop all of them and me, Flash, what are you going to do? And he's like, I'm dangling you over a bridge. I'm just going to drop you. And so he does. So then we see Barry's fighting against, or Future Flash, I should say, is fighting against all the robots when all of a sudden they all divert to go save Trickster because he doesn't have on his flight boots today. And so they all zoom down. But then Flash is like, not going to be that easy. And he grabs hold of Trickster, keeps on tackling him, gets rid of all the robots that are saving him. And Flash is like, I'm ready to die. How about you, Trickster? You ready to die? And as he's just plummeting down to the ground, he's just like, do you feel it? Do you feel the ground sneaking up on you, Trickster? And Trickster's like, oh, God, please, I don't want to die. And Flash is like, good enough. So he uses his wind powers, like swirling his arm around to cushion the fall, and they both land safely. And Flash takes him aside, and he's just like, all right, I want you to remember that. You don't want to die, right? You don't want to die? And Trickster's like, yeah, why? And he's like, because what happens after that is when you rob the bank, the robots aren't enough to carry the vault. And because you did it in the middle of the day, it drops on a family with a 1-month-old infant. And you are so absolutely racked with guilt that you end up killing yourself over it. I'm here to make sure that doesn't happen. So if you ever feel like are you going to give up your old ways? Are you going to do it? And Trickster's like, yes, I'm never going to be Trickster again. Here's where I keep all my stuff. Get rid of it. I don't want to be responsible for that. And he's like, good, awesome. And anytime you think you want to do it again, here's a little news clipping that says how you committed suicide. So don't. And yeah, that's literally all the Future Flash stuff. Meanwhile, modern day Barry. He goes to the address where Jones was last seen. Jones is inside, but he's already like throwing up all this green goop or whatever. The mashup killer was already there. Or he is the mashup killer and he took his own like thing because he starts transforming into this giant muscle-bound dude. And he's like, oh, I'm going to hurt you. So he starts coming after Barry, throwing punches. Barry's like, whoa, bro, the thing you took, it's too much strain on your heart. You're gonna die if you don't like slow down. I can get you help, please. It's not too late. And he lifts up this big like column over his head, and he's about to crush Barry, but it's just too much for his heart, and he ends up collapsing and dying. And he's just like, oh geez, all right. Looks at his watch, sees that it's almost 3 p.m. He's like, geez, I gotta go stop Wally. Like Wally's whatever he's gonna do, I gotta make sure he doesn't. So he turns into the Flash, reports the homicide out at the warehouse that Jones was at, and as Flash runs into town, he sees it's already 10 minutes past 3, and he's like, what? No, I was just running for like seconds. Like there's no way it was already past 3. But he then hears a police dispatch saying, oh, it's red hatchback car, there's a burglary or whatever going on. And we see Barry run over to the place where a few cops already have Wally and his friends handcuffed and taken off to the side. And Barry just runs in, grabs Wally, and says, all right, get out of here. And Wally's like, what? You're getting me out of an arrest? And he's like, yeah, I was supposed to be here beforehand to stop you. That's on me. You don't deserve this. Just get out of here. And Wally's like, no. Like, my friends, I'm ride or die with my crew. I'm not going to run away from this. I made my decisions. Like, yeah, no, I'm going to go ahead and do the same sort of stuff that they did to my Uncle Daniel. So he gets arrested by the cops, and the cops are just like, well, thanks for grabbing him, Flash. I don't even know how he got away from us. And he's like, yeah, totally. So then finally, Barry returns to the lab, talks to Patty. Patty's so upset about, everything going on after they left last time. She gives him a big hug. And Barry just, they all pin it on Jones. Jones was the one who did it, and then he tried using the powers for himself, but it just doesn't feel right. He was like, no, it doesn't make sense. Like, someone else had to have joined the crew. There had to have been another set. Who else knew that Jones was there? And Barry puts it all together as he realizes he takes Detective Seaborn's mug that he was drinking from earlier, gets fingerprints from it, and gets confirmation that the detective was the one who framed all of these guys and is making money off of it. So, oh no, it's a bad cop doing bad things. Who would have guessed? It's fine. It's an alright issue. I like the trickster stuff the most out of it, and honestly, I don't feel like they've got a good enough through line for Wally. I feel like these little things where Iris comes in and says like, hey, can you take him out to the baseball game? Or, hey, can you stop him from going to jail? Like, the fact that they're just so one and done in each issue, it doesn't feel like a strong enough through line. It just feels like we're just making up whatever we can to keep Wally in the book without any ideas to what we're actually doing with him yet. So hopefully we can get a bit more clarity on that, or just get to the future Flash in the present already. I'm ready for it. We don't have to do I'm sure we still got to do Heat Wave and Grodd. No, wait, we did Grodd. Heat Wave. Mirror Master. No, wait, he was done too. I can't even remember the stuff that was done yet, but regardless, yeah, just get to the future Flash stuff. I think we're done there. So for this, I'm going to give it a 6.5. It deserves a 7, except for the art. The art brings it down that 0.5, because there is some iffy looking Brett Booth pages in here. There's some real trouble with it. So 6.5. Hopefully it can improve, but just get to what you're doing already. Wonder Woman number 33, written by Brian Azzarello, art by Cliff Chiang. So last issue, we went up to fight the Firstborn, and everyone managed to get away scot-free except for Wonder Woman, who got dragged into whatever's going on there. So we open up this issue with Wonder Woman being held hostage. We show Firstborn taking some thorns or something and shoving them through his skull to make himself a crown. And he's like, all right, well, God of War, Queen of the Amazons, Wonder Woman, whatever you want to be called. What's up? I want you to join me. And he is standing over him. He is now, instead of a horrifically looking sinewed body because he was in the fire earlier, now he's just completely charred and he looks gross as hell. And Wonder Woman's like, okay, counterpoint, no, I don't like you and you are everything I hate. And he's like, yeah, well, I just want to be able to share the end of all things here with you. So can you do that? And she's like, no, you want to destroy the things I want to protect. So clearly not. And he's like, oh, well, if that's all it is, I'm just going to take away everything that you want to protect. So we cut to Paradise Island, where at the end of last issue, Orion showed up and he's just like, okay, you left Wonder Woman there with him? What the hell, man? And he's just like, look, you don't understand. It was a really messed up situation. Like, he is ridiculously strong. He destroyed my entire realm, says DeMatteis. And he's just like, yeah, no, I get it. You're all amateurs. I'll handle this operation now. And then Alika steps up being like, excuse me, you're on Paradise Island. You think you just step in here and, like, take charge of this stuff? And he's just like, oh, I'm sorry, do you not like the fact that maybe I can do this a little bit more competent to you? And she's like, hold your tongue. He's like, I'll show you what I can do with my tongue. And then immediately Harris steps in, picks him up by the throat and says, like, these women are my chosen ones. How dare you talk like that? Bite your tongue, and just slams him down on the ground. And Harris like, whoa, all right, that was enough excitement for one day. I'm gonna get a drink. And so she just storms off. Outside of, like, their temple or whatever they're hanging out in, a tank rolls up. Several tanks, in fact, it looks like, and then a whole bunch of soldiers start coming out. And it's just like, all right, they're here, light the fires, Gondor calls for aid. So they light a fire, the whole wall outside lights up, and they realize they're under attack. Alika stands up and just like, look, we got gods, we got men, and we got Amazons. All of us need to fight together because this is our island, and, you know, this is our test. We got to do it. We are warriors, Amazons, and they're all pumped up and ready to fight. Alika gets down, goes to Zola being like, I, however, have to take care of you because Wonder Woman said I got to keep you safe. And Zola's like, hey, man, I can handle myself. You don't got to worry about that. She's like, I don't doubt that, but let's let you handle yourself somewhere safer. So we cut back to Firstborn's realm. They're looking through a pool of blood, seeing everything going on. And Wonder Woman's like, you sent your army to be slaughtered by the Amazons. Like, there's no way that they're going to be able to live. And just like, oh, well, it's okay. Once you and I are together, we'll have many more children. And Wonder Woman's just like, that's disgusting. I hate everything about that. Don't make me think those thoughts. So Firstborn sends Cassandra into the Blood Ocean to do whatever, and she's very devoted, willing to do it. Is about to send in the Minotaur guy. Minotaur looks over at Wonder Woman for a second, and Firstborn's like, don't you look at my woman! And he just backhands him into the pool and just being like, yeah, you go do your job. How dare you? And Firstborn turns over to Wonder Woman just like, hey, I know you might think I'm being cruel, but that's because I am. Because that's what the world is. The world is cruel, and I'm not going to fight that. So we see Dio and Hermes holding back as the fight's going on, and Dio's like, why do they fight? Life is so wonderful. Why would they want to go into this fight and possibly lose it all? And Hermes is like, they fight because they want to live, and that's how they truly feel alive. As gods, we don't understand mortality, but, like, this is what it means. So we go back into the Firstborn's realm, and Firstborn's just like, oh, your sister's gods are all fighting your battles. That must hurt. And she's like, no, not at all. I'm proud of them for coming to and, like, doing all this stuff. And Firstborn's just like, oh, yeah, no, I get that. That's cool. Hey, you want to get married? And she's just like, no, please, stop asking. Like, I am willing to die for my people. There's no way that I'm ever going to marry you. And we see during the battle, the blood that is pooling outside of the soldiers that are being slaughtered for, like, Firstborn side. Cassandra and the Minotaur can come up through them, and they start joining the fight as well. Orion gets in, like, a fist fight with the Minotaur. Alika, meanwhile, is trying to get Zola to safety. Everywhere they go, though, is just more danger. And Zola's like, maybe we should just go back to the center area where there's more people, because this seems even more dangerous. And Alika's like, fair enough. So, again, back in the Firstborn realm, he's just like, look, I don't want to take your life. I want to share my life with you. That's what I want to do. And one of them was like, for real though, I'm not going to do that. My name is Diana. All those other things you called me before, they're just descriptors. It's not who I am. You are your Firstborn. You didn't even have a name. You're nobody. And he's just like, all right, fair enough. And so he extends out like a bone spike from his wrist and just being like, all right, stabs it into her back. and just leaves her to bleed out as he goes down into the blood pool as well. And he's like, there, I tried to be cool. I tried to be a nice guy. You didn't want any part of it. I'm out. So she's just left to bleed out there. Orion charges at the Minotaur. He's getting super pissed off, and then all of a sudden the Minotaur just impales him with his horn through Orion's stomach. The Firstborn comes out of the pool of blood that comes out of Orion, and Firstborn's just like, yep, all right, kill them all. So all of the Amazons are happy that they have the amphitheater secured, but then Cassandra's like, you idiots, that just means you're bolted in here. And she starts throwing down like spears at high velocities. And Alika tells Zola to run, but it's too late, and Alika gets stabbed through the chest. Zola starts freaking out, saying like, oh, Alika, please, wake up, come back. And then all of a sudden, little baby Zeke's eyes light up. And as Wonder Woman is bleeding out in the Firstborn's realm, in the real world, Queen Hippolyta, the statue, still stone, starts moving, picks up a spear, and is ready to defend Zola, seemingly by Zeke's powers. So, yeah, I said last issue it felt like we were building up to a final confrontation. I wasn't sure how long it was going to take, but it seems like that's now. It seems like we're just doing that. So I like it. I think it's doing a good job. It's setting up this idea that there's heavy losses on both sides, but also setting up that there's some cool stuff going on. And Wonder Woman, of course, joined the fight at some point. I'm probably like next issue, it's going to be a thing. Bringing back Queen Hippolyta, that's cool as well. It feels like we're finally pulling together everything from this run. We're saying, okay, all the gods, everybody who Wonder Woman's ever come up against and talked to, they're all on Wonder Woman's side, all against Firstborn. And it sets him up as a menacing villain. Honestly, I thought he looked a little bit when it came down to just being burned skin, but now that his skin is like charred and he's nothing but just this horrific disfigured monster, I like it. I think it looks like he's finally reached his final form. So all in all, I'm going to say this is I'll give it an 8. I think this is a solid enough issue. The only thing I would critique it for is that the Wonder Woman stuff is kind of very repetitive, where every page is his Firstborn being like, hey, you want to be my wife? And she says no. And he's like, I'll try again in 5 seconds. So I'll give it an 8, but it does have its own little faults. All-Star Western number 33, written by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Staz Johnson. So last issue, so Jonah and Tallulah were bound to some horses after losing a bounty, and then they came across some highway burglars, and then they were shot down off their horses. And it doesn't look too good as they're held at gunpoint at the opening of this issue. So the leader of the group is just like, oh, well, what happened to you guys? And Jonah stays silent, and Tallulah's basically just like, screw you, dude, you suck. You're a coward, and you're awful. And he's just like, what do you say to me? You're looking pretty gross yourself. And it's just like, yeah, well, what are you going to do? You're going to shoot me? You're like a coward when I'm stuck under a horse? And this guy's name is Merle, and Merle tells this guy, like, hey, get her out from under. I want to show her I'm not no coward. And he's like, sir, why not just shoot him now? And he's like, because I'm not a coward, do it. So they lift up the horse off of Tallulah and Jonah, and Tallulah keeps on talking back, just being like, oh, yeah, no, if you just want to shoot me now, yeah, go ahead, like a friggin' coward. So finally, when she manages to stand up, he's like, oh, yeah, you think you're funny? I think that you're just talking back because you're scared and you don't know how else to react. And she's like, oh, hey, look at Mr. Amadeus Arkham over here with your psychotherapy and your habble-babble bullshit. And he's just like, what are you doing? Are you stalling? Like, what are you hoping to get out of this? And as Jonah gets up out from under the horse, he steals the other two guys' guns and immediately shoots them all dead. And it's just like, yeah, all right, of course you were stalling. Like, that was just for our sakes. So Tallulah's amazed that he was so stupid to not just kill them while she was strapped under the horse. And he's just like, yeah, well, some men don't understand women. Anyway, let's hope they got some breakfast in their sacks here. So we go back to the town that they were originally from when they were looking for that Blackthorn guy. And all of a sudden, another group of bounty hunters come in, and they start firing their guns in the air, saying they're looking for Blackthorn. And it's like, all right, you got to the count of 5 to tell us where he is. And they say 1 and shoot a guy, 2, shoot a woman. It's just like, whoa, okay, hold on. Yeah, no, we're good. Look, you can't, you have to leave him with us. It's super important that we get that bounty. And it's just like, well, we would do that, but we want the bounty for ourselves, so we're not going to do that. And he outstretches a hand and like puts it on the guy's shoulder. And the dude from that is like, don't you touch me, and punches the one guy out in the face, seemingly killing him. So they manage to find Blackthorn. They take him out of town. Jonah and Tallulah ride in sometime later, and just like, all right, well, the whole town's empty, and there's just a dead guy in the middle of the street. This is weird. And there's one lone woman who's just like, hey, yeah, there was this posse that drove in, took Blackthorn for the bounty. They went back off that way, and they immediately, Jonah and them go out and find the posse, and they find them later that night camping. Tallulah and Jonah sneak up and just like, okay, we can jump in now, but, and they point over to another side of the rocks where there's this kid who's obviously just sitting there also biding his time. Just like, let's wait to see what that kid does, because if he jumps in and maybe manages to take one of them out, it's just going to make our job easier. So as they're waiting, Tallulah tries laying down the moves on Jonah, and Jonah's like, seriously, now is not the time. And she's like, oh, there's a snake in your boot. So soon enough, the kid comes down, tries sneaking over to Blackthorn to grab him, and one of the guys wakes up, so the kid shoots him, and then the kid immediately gets shot in the chest right back. And as the other members of the posse are trying to put down the kid, Jonah jumps in and unloads upon them. So the rest of the posse is completely killed, but the kid is also not long for this world because he's got a shotgun to the chest. And the kid explains the whole of everything. He says the town's water supply was poisoned, some miners hit like a sour spot, and everyone started getting sick. The kid and the whole town wanted the bounty for Blackthorn in order to pay for medicine, in order to save people's lives as they were getting sick, because no one realized that the water supply was poisoned until it was too late. And this kid's parents specifically were dying, and he went out to try to be like the last resort to try to save Blackthorn to get the money. So the kid ends up, he's not in good shape, but he's not dying immediately. Tallulah stays behind with him while Jonah heads into town to cash in the bounty. So he gets in the next morning, throws Blackthorn in there. Deputy's like, awesome, sweet. I'll walk you over to the bank. We can get you the money right now. So he gets the money, immediately goes to the doctor. Doctor's like, oh, yeah, no, take these pills, 2 a day, keep on taking them as long as you can, and then eventually you'll feel better. So Jonah hops back on. He goes back out to the desert where Tallulah was. Tallulah's already dug a grave, buried the kid, left all the other members of the posse out for the vultures, though, and they decide to go back into town. But when they get there, there's no one. It's completely empty. It is an absolute ghost town. So Jonah goes to the local church, and then he walks in, and that old woman's the only one who's left. And he's like, hey, that kid's parents, are they still here? And she's just like, nah, they died. They aren't. I'm the only one left. Everyone else is gone. And it's just like, well, where'd they all go? And she points to behind the church, and it's just a mass graveyard, just crosses everywhere, and you see like toys of children and stuff left behind. It's a very sad sight. But he hands over the medicine to the woman, saying, hey, if you were drinking the water, take these pills, keep taking them until you feel better, and you'll be okay. So Jonah and Tallulah go back out in the desert, and Tallulah's like, so what do we do now? And they're, having some food, and he's just like, I figured we'd keep eating. And she's like, no, not like now, but like tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day, like, well, it's a nice country out here. Maybe we take some time away from being bounty hunters and trying to solve the world's problems and whatnot, and just enjoy ourselves for a while. And Jonah's like, yeah, you know what? For once, I agree with you. For once, I get it. And he passes over a bottle of alcohol. They share a drink, and seems like they have a good night. And that leads into the next issue, which is, of course, the final issue, with special guest artists as well. So be sure to check that out. But yeah, no, it's a... I think last issue was a little bit too, I don't want to say dense, but a bit too confusing for its own good. We had like double crosses, triple crosses, different characters all running into each other. It was a little bit confusing. Once the kid explains what's happening with like the town needing the bounty, and that's why Jonah was double crossed. Like, I get it to an extent. I understand, but like, it doesn't make the last issue any easier to read on its own. It probably should have had a little bit explained back in that issue, and then, you know, still get a little bit here as well. But overall, solid issue. I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 7.5. I think it does. There's just enough moments where it gives some action followed by some breathing room that really feels like super solid writing to me. So yeah, 7.5. Really enjoyed it. Secret Origins number 4. Of course, it's an anthology book as always, and I'll just give the name of each creative team as we hit each one. So first up is Harley Quinn, written by Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Stéphane Roux. So we open up with Harley on a stage, basically saying, "Yeah, I've got a backstory, and I'm telling it to you because I'm sure you guys will never repeat it. And the details may have changed, but all the players remain the same." So we cut back to Harley's past. She is a daughter of a family with, I think it was 5 kids total, her and then 4 younger brothers. No, sorry, 4 kids, and she was the oldest. And we see, you know, her family's a pretty normal family, more closer to Simpsons than anything else. And then Harley's there reading a book on like criminal minds and stuff like that. And while her brother brings a dead squirrel over towards her on a stick, she pulls out a lighter and sets it on fire. So she says, "Yeah, you know, I never really felt like anybody understood me until finally I met this kid at a party named Bernie Bash." And we see it's like a Halloween costume party or something, and this kid sits down on the couch next to her just like, "You ever seen a dead body?" Harley's like, "No." And he's like, "I have. I saw a dude drown a woman once, and I looked in her eyes after she died, and it was crazy." And Harley's like, "Oh my God, that's like the coolest thing ever. You saw an actual murder? That's incredible. Like, describe it to me. Tell me everything about it." And so they talk for a while, and he basically says, "Okay, if you could kill anyone at this party, who would it be?" And Harley points out this girl named Bonnie Harper, who apparently is a bully that just makes Harley's life miserable. And she's like, "Yeah, that's who I'd throw her out of a car." And Harley then says, "Oh, what about you? Who would you kill?" And he's like, "Bonnie Harper." She's like, "Why? What'd she do to you?" And he's like, "Upset you." And immediately they have a little bit of a thing going on, but their romance was cut short because a few days, weeks, something like that later, dude followed through and threw Bonnie in front of a truck outside, like out of a car. And he went to juvie for that, and Harley cut class in order to be at his court hearing, and it managed to sneak into his house sometime later and steal a stuffed beaver in order, because he's into taxonomy, or taxidermy. And apparently she found out sometime later that he was stabbed to death in prison. So after that, she focused on her studies, became Harley Quinn the Doctor as we know her. She became interested in criminal minds and stuff like that. And she wanted to do stuff at Arkham. And she realized that the Arkham inmates don't talk to doctors, but they do talk to each other. So she coerced the warden to allow her to pretend to be crazy and get into Arkham Asylum. And it worked, but the Joker, one who usually sticks to himself, took a liking to her. And he immediately saw through her ruse or whatever, called her out on it, but she was already smitten by him and how intelligent he was and how he always said the right thing and whatnot. So eventually the warden was killed, a new warden stepped in, found out about the thing, and was going to basically chastise Harley and send her out of the prison, but Harley wasn't having that, so she ended up shooting a few of the guards with Joker toxin and then ran off with the Joker. So at that point, Joker did the thing of throwing Harley into the acid, bleaching her skin and whatnot. She was willing to change everything about her personality, so she stopped being Harley the Doctor and started putting on the Ditz personality, but immediately the Joker was done with her and like dumped her on the side of the road. So Harley then decided, oh, I could be whatever I want to be. Sometimes I'm the innocent one, sometimes I'm an absolute menace to society, I can be whatever. So we see her become the Harley Quinn that we all know. And she's like, well, that's, there's a bunch more stuff after that, but I'm bored and I'm done telling you my story. And we see the people out in the audience are all, as far as I could tell, villains of some sort. And they're all bound and gagged up. And Harley's like, and the reason I know you'll never share my story is that you're all going to die. And she leaves the theater where she's telling the story, presses a button, and it all explodes behind her. That's it. That's the story. It's all right. I give it like a 6.5. It's not great, not awful, but it's there. Next up is Green Arrow, written by Geoff Lemire, art by Dennis Cowan. So, young Oliver Queen, who, he was a normal boy, but like, his father was a great man, the king of Seattle, more or less, and Oliver was the prince in waiting. And we see him as a kid, he's trying to do cool tricks on his bike. He ends up wiping out, and he cries to his dad, and his dad's is like, hey, Oliver, life is pain, but you got to get up there and you got to keep trying. Never stop fighting, never give up. So Oliver takes that to heart, and everything he does, he's just great at. He picks up like fencing and archery and whatnot, but as he grows older, he never quite falls in line with his father. He ends up fighting with him and butting heads quite often, until eventually he just decides, you know what, screw Queen Industries, I'm just going to go off and be a party boy. So we see out on like an oil rig that they set a party on, Oliver's doing some archery stuff, when all of a sudden, people coming after Robert Queen decide, oh, it's him. You want to get to him, you get to his heart, you attack his family. So they attack the oil rig and it explodes, and Oliver is washed up on an island. And as soon as he comes there, he's like, oh, well, I'm finally free. I'm free to be whatever I want to be. So he has his bow and arrow that washed up with him. He starts adapting to island life, starts killing his food and whatnot, until one day he's captured by some mercenaries or something on the island. And he is tortured for quite some time by this masked man who says, who are you? How'd you get to the island? Tell me your name. And Oliver's like, I'm Oliver Queen, for God's sakes. That's who I am. I'm telling you the truth. Masked man's like, liar. Till finally one day Oliver manages to break free. He runs as far and as fast as he can. He's being shot at and whatnot. And finally he is accosted by the masked man one more time at the edge of a cliff. And Oliver makes the decision and he flips the guy over the edge of the cliff, seemingly to his death. So after that, Oliver's like in a bit of a funk. He doesn't know what he's doing anymore. He thinks all this was for nothing. But he's finally rescued off the island. And when he gets home, he feels like, this isn't enough. I need to be doing something. Normal modern life is whatever. I'm going to go out and I'm going to be a vigilante. So he becomes the Green Arrow. And he realizes he needs to do the whole secret identity thing. So he does turn on the Oliver Queen, playboy, genius, philanthropist, whatever. And in the nights, he becomes Green Arrow. He's got a team made of John Diggle and Naomi Singh, and he uses his fortune to fight crime and whatnot. And it's literally the backstory you've seen like 4 different times. Like, it's all pretty much normal. I like this one. Again, it doesn't feel like an origin story that needs to be told, but if you're going to do it anyway, it at least expanded a little bit upon the more young age of Oliver. That's something you don't see that much when he's like a young kid. So I'd say this one's probably closer to like I'd say 7. Yeah, it's a flat 7. Last up, we get Damien, aka Robin. This is written by Peter Tomasi, art by Ian Bertram. Ian Bertram has a very specific art style, and it's a bit distracting throughout this issue, but it's not too bad. So this takes place just after Batman died via Final Crisis, but God only knows what happened in New 52 continuity. But he's looking at Batman's suit in like the container, and he says, oh, I'm going out, Father. Gotham needs me. And he starts suiting up, and Alfred's like, the hell you are going out? No, like we're doing what we can out there, but like you should be staying put because you're a 10-year-old boy. And Damien's like, pshaw, they aren't doing enough out there. Nothing is going to keep me from going out. So he rides out on a motorcycle, and we see it's just chaos out in Gotham because everyone knows Batman's gone, and he just starts laying into like gangsters and whatnot. And Alfred calls him in and be like, yo, you're going a bit too hard, man. You're beating them to a pulp. This is too much. And he's just like, oh, shut up, Alfred, I don't care. So he turns off his GPS, but Alfred's like, I can still keep an eye on you. We have like cameras all over the city. But Alfred calls us over to Nightwing. He's like, hey, I need you to go check on Damien. And Nightwing is basically like, I never really talked to him before. Like, we didn't have time to meet up before Bruce died. So give me the lowdown. What's his story? And Alfred gives the whole spiel of Batman and Talia hooked up Talia had a test tube baby, grew it super fast, basically indoctrinated him into becoming the best assassin ever of all time, taught it all the different art styles and like everything he needed to do to be a super genius as well. He's just the best kid, period. But ultimately, Damian was like, all right, I want to meet my father. And Talia was like, yeah, all right, Batman could teach you a thing or two. So she relented. They met up. And Batman was like, you're too brutal. I'm going to try to work that out of you and focus your abilities towards the side of good. And just as Batman was seemingly getting through to Damian, he died via final crisising. So at that point, Nightwing catches up to Damian. Damian was attacking Killer Croc down in the sewers. And Damian's like, I heard you from like a mile away. You've been following me all night long, watching me as I've been attacking people. And we do get panels of him just going absolute brutal, but not killing, just maiming. And Nightwing's like, look, Alfred was worried about you, but like, it's fine. He more or less just wanted you back in because he wanted to show you something. And they get back to the cave and they find a note written by Bruce saying, Damian, you've earned this. Make the Wayne family proud. Go to the locker and get out your costume. And we see in the locker is the Robin costume that he suits up. And Nightwing is in the Batman costume now. He's taken over the role of Batman in order to show Gotham that Batman is still around. And he's talking to Alfred, and Alfred's like, oh, good job imitating Master Bruce's handwriting. And Nightwing's like, yeah, well, it was necessary. So Robin hops in the Bat sub with Nightwing, a.k.a. Batman at this point, and he's like, hey, don't get too used to that cowl, Grayson. And he's like, yeah, I wouldn't dream of it, Damian. So the beginning of Grant Morrison's Batman and Son, or whatever that one was called. I like this one. The art style is hit or miss. There are a few panels in here which are just laughably bad, but there are also a few panels in here that are very well done. And so it's literally the definition of hit and miss. I'm going to give this one... I'm going to give it an 8. And I think the reason I'm high is because this is something that it's a period of it's a period of DC Comics that New 52 did not cover. They haven't gone back and told this part of the story yet of Nightwing and Damian and their first night out. Obviously that did exist in continuity, but not New 52. So I'm pleased that they went back for it here. So yeah, Secret Origins, those are the 3 stories, and pick up next issue. Justice League Dark number 33, written by J.M. DeMatteis, art by Andre Guinaldo. So, the beginning of a new arc. Last time, obviously, was the Nightmare Nurse stuff wrapping up, and this time we pick up with the Dead Man arc. And he opens up by saying, like, hey, I don't actually know what the House of Mystery is. It's just kind of a very weird place. We see Constantine is playing chess against Swamp Thing, and Swamp Thing's like, nobody wants you here, Constantine, go away. But, like, finish your game of chess first, because that's all you're good for. Zatanna's sitting in a room. She's looking at a photo album of her family, saying, like, oh, Mom and Dad, I miss you. And Dead Man's just floating through the house, and all of a sudden he comes across a kitchen. And inside is Nightmare Nurse, and she's like, oh, hey, sit down, have some food. I mean, don't actually, but you know what I mean. And Nightmare Nurse is basically like, hey, are you sure you're not upset with me, being a demon, and I'm just, possessing this body, and I betrayed the team and whatnot? And Deadman's like, you saved the team as well. There's no big deal. Like, we're all cool. And she's like, oh, one of these days I'm going to make a spell to make certain parts of you solid. Wink. And Deadman's, he's happy a little bit, but then all of a sudden the kitchen disappears, and he's in a swirling windy vortex with all these souls screaming out in pain. And he looks over and he sees they're in the Himalayas, and nearby is Nanda Parbat. And he's like, what the hell? Nanda Parbat was gone at the end of Forever Evil. What's this about? So as he's flying there, all of a sudden his powers give out, and he just starts falling to his, again, death in the Himalayas. And then we see he is still back in the kitchen, but his body is like decomposing into a puddle. And the rest of the Justice League Dark show up, and they're like, what the hell? Jesus Christ. What's happened to his body? And Zatanna points out, like, he doesn't have a body. However he looks is just a mental projection, which means something's wrong with his brain. So she casts a spell saying, fix your brain. And all of a sudden, Deadman just starts reconstituting. And it takes him like half an hour before he's finally able to talk. And he's like, I saw Nanda Parbat. I got to go back there. It's calling to me for some reason. I don't know what's up. Maybe it's the house. I just got to check it out. And Constantine's just like, hey, look, don't trust the house. The house is messed up. And Deadman's like, screw you, Constantine. Nobody wants you here. And Zatanna's like, look, all right, we get it. We've got important things to do. Nanda Parbat's out there. We should try to find it. So Zatanna, Nightmare Nurse, and Constantine cast a location spell. They're focusing super hard, trying to find Nanda Parbat. And all of a sudden, they just start freaking out. They're like, we got to stop. And then everything explodes. And turns out that, not like deathly explosion, but just like, oh no, the spell backfired. And turns out whatever safeguards are protecting Nanda Parbat, it's pushing back against them, and it's strong stuff. They're not going to be able to find it. So Deadman's upset about that. He decides to go to a circus. I'm not even sure if it's his original circus, but he heads off and he's like, yeah, going back home. And he gives a little backstory on Deadman dying and whatever. And when he was turning into a puddle, he called out for Brahma Das, which I was unfamiliar with, but it turns out Brahma Das is a dude who was at Nanda Parbat, who basically was the one who took Deadman's soul and said, look, we can move you on to paradise, or you can stay here and help people. And Deadman chose to help people. But as he arrives at this circus, Brahma Das is there again. And he's like, hey, Brahma Das, it's so great to see you. I mean, I barely know you. I've met you literally one time, but I feel like we're best buds. And Brahma Das is like, I totally get it, man. We are best buds. You're my dearest friend. Hey, by the way, you want to know what happened to Nanda Parbat? And all of a sudden they teleport and they're back in the Himalayas. They're in the ruins of Nanda Parbat. And Brahma summons a giant spell thing. And he's just like, yeah, I'm going to take you across the trans-dimensional gulfs to get there. And he casts a spell which causes a giant spirit dragon to show up. And he's like, yes, the lords of paradise will carry their children home. And Brahma Das disappears, leaving Deadman to hop onto the dragon, and it takes them through a portal or something. So we then get the Justice League Dark realizing that Deadman was gone. They come through a portal and they're like, okay, we traced him down to this circus. We had his stuff there, but he's not here anymore. But there's a spike in dark energy. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of little winged demon looking things come out. But it turns out they're not demons. They are embodied spells and enchantments. And they start attacking the Justice League Dark. They can't be hurt physically because they're just spells, so Zatanna casts some counter spells to dissolve them, and they leave behind magical residue, which Zatanna is able to trace and says okay, I can figure out where they're from, and if they are from where I think they are, we got a long journey ahead of us. So we see Deadman on the back of this two-headed dragon just flying through this weird red void, the doorways to infinite universes, and then all of a sudden he starts going down this spiraling hallway. He feels like he's going to hurl, but he comes out on the other side into a paradise. And Deadman feels like he states it as such. He's like, I breathe in song and I hear love and everything's fantastic. And then all of a sudden this random person appears who also has blue skin like Brahma Das and all that stuff. And he's just like, hey, yeah, Nanda Parbat, if it makes people feel great and whatnot. But we've been with you all along. I hope you know that. We've been hidden in the folds of your consciousness so that you could lead us to Nanda Parbat because we're actually evil. And then all of a sudden this little blue dude becomes this giant Cthulhu-looking dude calling himself Pantheon. And it's not good. He's got black speech bubbles. So the rest of the Justice League Dark arrive at the ruins of Nanda Parbat. They see that a portal is still open, so they just jump through it. Swamp Thing goes last, and it closes on his midsection. So he's like, all right, that's great. That's going to take me some time to fix. Thanks, guys. Fantastic. So as they come out on the other side of the portal, they see that this paradise that we saw before is in absolute ruins, and they realize that whatever they're here for, they're too late. They look up in the sky and see not one, not two, but 100,000 of these Cthulhu pantheons just up in the sky watching them. And they start immediately swooping down to attack Justice League. And they put up shields and whatever trying to block, but these things they're apparently projections, they're thought forms from a massive intelligence, so they aren't actually even there, and their projections are able to just blast right through their shields and knocks them down to the ground, seemingly killing them. I'm sure they're just unconscious. So then, final page, we get Dead Man. He wakes up, his head is pounding, his body's on fire, and he's like, wait a minute, hold on. I'm dead. My head doesn't pound, and my body doesn't feel like it's on fire. And he looks down and he realizes he's alive. He's now just man. He's still wearing the outfit, though. Yeah, no, it's a solid issue. I mean, there was, at the beginning of New 52, a Dead Man story over in DC Universe Presents, and I really enjoyed it because it felt like it was playing with some philosophical stuff, but I also enjoyed it because it felt like Dead Man was an underutilized character, and they could do a lot with him. And I feel like this is going to be something similar. It doesn't feel like it's going to be quite as deep as that original story was, but I'm into it. I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt in terms of like it's going to do some cool stuff. So yeah, overall, I'd say this one is probably like a solid 7. My only real critique is that it feels like this is probably 2 issues worth of stuff just kind of speed run through very quickly to get wherever it's going. Honestly, I feel like this is going to be one that probably like wraps up in the next issue just because Future's End coming up, they don't want to stick around with this too long, but we'll see. All in all, it's still solid. I'll give it that 7. Trinity of Sin, Pandora, number 13, written by Ray Fawkes, art by Tom Derenick and Francis Portela. So last issue, it was a whole big fight, and then Gigantus showed up and said, hey, you better not be hurting Pandora. So this issue picks up with Agent Kincaid and Gigantus just standing over Pandora's not dead body, but severely wounded body. And Gigantus like, you better fix her, or I swear to God. And Agent Kincaid's like, okay, I'll do what I can. Jesus, sorry. But so she leans down and starts giving like some first aid to Pandora. And she's trying to like justify, like, you do understand that she is the mother of all monsters, right? Like she is bringer of evil, queen of sin. I don't think we should be helping her. So we get a flashback to ancient Greece where Pandora, of course, is, and she's talking to a blacksmith whose name is Marcos. And Marcos is making this powerful chain for her to be able to attack sins with, and they are deeply in love. And then all of a sudden, Wrath, controlling some soldiers, comes in and attacks Pandora. She comes in and fights against them handily, but one of the spears manages to let loose and kills Marcos, much to her absolute destruction. So she contacts a witch lady, and the witch lady's like, okay, here's the deal. If we burn his body in a very ritualistic way and say some magic words, then he will be reborn in a way that, like, his soul will carry on into a new body. It will grow up normal speed, and you will have this connection. You will know where he is. You will be able to track him down. And that, as long as he loves you truly, like, you better, he's not going to be going to paradise. So if he doesn't love you, this is a curse for him. I hope you understand that. It's like, oh no, he understands. He will. So we see Pandora is basically standing up. She's got tons of bandages and stuff, basically just holding her up as best as she can. And then she turns to them and she's like, look, thanks. We need to burn Marcus's body before his spirit leaves. Like, I need to be able to reincarnate him again. Our love has to endure. And Gigantus is like, that's beautiful. That's so good. Yes, we'll do that. And Kincaid's like, hold the phone. Well, hold on. You're bringing this guy back. What if he doesn't want to come back? And it's just like, look, I've been doing this generations and over. I know all the questions. His soul, it doesn't like replace someone else's soul. It just puts him at the front of the line of new souls, and then the next person hops in, and he clearly wants to come back. It's not a forceful thing, okay? So they they set up to reincarnate him, but they realize, like, yeah, no, he is someone who I've walked the world with, and I was hoping that we would be able to find happiness now that I have finally killed the 7 deadly sins, but it seems that fate had different plans. So then we cut to ancient Thailand, and we see him in a different version there. I'm not sure what his name, Mongkut, and he's doing something with like a cloth weapon, and then all of a sudden his temple's being attacked, and so he runs off and just like, oh, I will, if I die, just bring me back again, my love, and I will see you over and over again. So they set up a funeral pyre, and Agent Kincaid is like, okay, I guess I'll help if, like, you know, you've settled all my doubts. So they set him on the funeral pyre, and she's like, oh, I will see you again in just a few years once you are grown again, Marcus. And Kincaid's like, assuming you live that long. She's like, what? Why you gotta be like that? Even Giganta's like, what the hell is wrong with you? So then we get to pirate times, 1500s, and we get Matthias, who is a seafaring captain, and he throws a pistol over to Pandora, a flintlock, and is just like, here, take this, shoot these demons that are attacking our ship. And we just get Matthias dying off panel. Like, he's just, and then he's dead. So modern day, Pandora says the magic words, it causes a fire to explode, and, you know, his soul is reincarnated into a new body, and a portal opens up showing exactly where he's going to be reincarnated, and it turns out it's Okinawa, Japan. So he's like, all right, he's being born there now. I will instill this vision into my heart, and I will know where he is always. I will know him when I see him. So at that point, Gigantus is like, so that's it? He's always with you? And Kincaid's like, does he have a choice in that? And it's like, oh, he always has a choice. I always give him that choice, but he's never left me in all the generations. So at this point, we see Pandora's with Kincaid, and Kincaid's basically just like, look, I still don't trust you. I mean, you're Pandora. It's everything in my body is saying I should kill you right here and right now, but like, you sound like you're a good person, so like, maybe you're worth saving. And then all of a sudden her phone goes off. Now, all throughout this issue, I've been skipping over it, but there's been little shadows of like hands reaching out and stuff like that. And then finally we get the reveal of this little demonic goblin looking guy. He's a vampire. I'll just cut to the chase. He's a vampire. But Agent Kincaid gets a call, and we see it interspersed with all of these different vampires feeding on this guy, and one woman just sitting in a chair, just looking all like, yes, it is finally our time. It is time for us, our feeding ground, and there's magic in the air and all this stuff. And Kincaid's getting a call saying, okay, I just got rumors that there's an infestation in Baltimore. It's going to take over the whole city in like 6 hours. If you are on the side of good, I could use your help, Pandora, to take out this vampire infestation. You up for it? And if so, I can maybe get you taken off my list of things I think should die. And then we see, you know, the vampire horde is ready to take and start a new vampire nation. And then it says, tune in next time for iVampire. Which, if you know anything about me, I love the iVampire. I thought that was a fantastic series. So, yeah. It's an unnecessary issue. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is unnecessary because it is about how this relationship that I think they wanted to flourish, they wanted to show like Pandora and Marcus as like a thing, and then the series gets canceled, and obviously you can't do that, but they were like, well, she's immortal, and we'll have a future Marcus. We're just going to reincarnate him. That's just the thing. Their love is forever and always binding, and da-da-da-da-da. It's skippable. It's highly skippable. I think the only thing that comes out of this is setting up the vampire stuff. I don't think this issue is really much of anything at all. So, yeah, not a horrible issue, just not necessary. So I'm going to say this is probably like a flat 6 for me. Nah, 5.5. It's not a great issue, all things considered, but it's not also awful. It's just so completely mediocre and bland. Oh well. Batman Eternal number 16, written by Snyder, Tynion, Fox, Layman, and Seeley, art by Dustin Nguyen. So this issue picks up with Jim Corrigan being attacked by a man, I know he has a name, but like I can't even remember it right now, and he's like, oh, this place used to be a hospital, but now it sucks. Arkham Asylum just sucks, and they checked me in because I was hearing voices, and now I've lost everything. It took my arm, man, and all of these creatures I'm making, because there's all these like smoke monsters or spirits or whatever coming after Corrigan, they kind of look like the Spectre. Just like, oh, these aren't my things. It's your sorrows are fueling them, and they're going to kill you now. You must have hurt a lot of people with this Spectre stuff going on inside you. So Batwing calls into Batman, and he's like, Batman, hey, I'm at Arkham. Everything's chill. Don't worry about it. We're totally cool. And Batman's like, good to hear, Batwing. You keep up the good work. Batwing's like, oh, yeah, I love this suit. It's super cool, Batman. Thank you. Batman's like, you made it your own. But it turns out that it's actually Joker's daughter, who is perfectly imitating Batwing's voice and using the comms to call Batman. So Batman, meanwhile, is swinging through Gotham City, and he comes across Jason Bard and other GCPD doing an arrest. And as he's putting away one of the guys, one of the other cops get his gun stolen by one of these gang members. And the gang member's just like, all right, now listen up. Here's how we're going to do things. And then Bard just shoots him in the hand, gets him to drop the gun from like 50 feet away. And they manage to get the thing on him. Batman is watching over from the rooftop, and Bard notices him. And that's when Vicky Vale steps in, just being like, oh, wow, it looks like GCPD really stepping it up. Or, is this all because of you, Bard? And just like, Miss Vale, what are you doing? This is an open crime scene. You can't be here. And he's just like, oh, yeah, you know, I just came in looking to see if you had anything you wanted to talk about. I know you have my number. How about you give me a call? And he's just like, is this for the story or because you want to have sex? And she's just like, oh my God, this guy. So we go over to Arkham, where Professor Pig is being brought in, and the like police officer just like, this dude is absolutely stupid crazy. And it's just like, whoa, crazy is a not good word here. We prefer that he is sick and he is coming to us for treatment. And that's the Arkham orderly saying that. And so they bring in his paperwork, and Pig's just oinking the whole time. And finally, they lead him down a hallway, and Pig's just like, ooh, this is quite a fun park. Let me ride it. And he's like, oh, of course. Give yourself into the light, Professor Pig. And all of a sudden, we see this weird, spiritual, misty-looking light just overtake Pig's body, and he screams out. Cut to Tokyo. Red Robin's walking around, being stalked close behind by Harper Row. And all of a sudden there's a crash, and Robin is attacked by a bunch of metallic tentacles. And he sees Harper, and is just like, Harper, I told you to stay on the plane. She's like, yeah, I didn't listen. So Robin's doing his best to stop the tentacles. He's like throwing some, I don't even know what they are, if I'm being honest. It looks like some pens, like into their joints to stop them. Meanwhile, Harper just pulls out her phone and taps on an app, and like sends out a signal that stops all the tentacles dead. And he's just like, Jesus Christ, Harper, get back on the plane. You can't be here. And then he's interrupted by the old guy with the monkey, who showed up like 4 issues ago. Just like, yes, that was a test. You survived. Now we can talk. And then we'll have another test. So we go back to Corrigan with the spirit, and the name of the guy was Mr. Bygone. That's what it was. And Corrigan's just like, all right, you wanna hit me with some spirits? Here's what you need to understand about me, Mr. Bygone, is that, yeah, the Spectre's inside of me, and I regret every time he comes out, and sometimes when he doesn't. But you know what? I make do. That's just my life. That's what I got to live with. And he punches Mr. Bygone in the face and just walks away. So later on, we see Batwing being approached by Joker's daughter, and Joker's daughter is like, oh, and all like the camera and stuff are out. Like everything's just black for him. But Joker's daughter's just like, hey, Daddy says you're injured, so we're just gonna take a little look at you here. And she comes over and like tries to grab his arm, but then he manages to feel her and like pull his arm away, and is just like ready to try to start to fight. And she's like, oh, you better tell me what's going on here. Who are you? And she's like, oh, I'm Joker's daughter. I rule this place. And it's like, I'm sorry, you want to be called someone's daughter rather than just your own identity? That's stupid. And she's like, you're stupid. Also, we're remaking you, Batwing. We're going to remake all of Gotham City. That's we grow in the dark. We're the scary things. And Daddy says, get him, Maxie. And Batwing's like, what the hell are you talking about? And he looks down the hall, and he sees this giant hulk of a man who is Maxie Zeus. And Joker's daughter says, this is Maxie. He's our vessel. He's going to have our Messiah put into him. Don't need to worry about that. But for right now, he's also unstoppable. So Batwing tries tasing him. Doesn't do anything. Maxie comes at him. Batwing throws some punches, but it seemingly doesn't do anything either. It just temporarily stops him while he continues lunging forward. And he finally grabs hold of Batwing. Batwing does a flip over him, tries to like get a cord around his neck to like choke him out. And then all of a sudden, everything goes offline on Batwing's suit, and seemingly Joker's daughter and Maxie Zeus both just disappear into a puff of smoke. And Batwing's like, okay, try to get my suit back online, then the jets, and also try to get in contact with Batman, for God's sakes. So, and also he's trying to decrypt the Riddler's code from last issue. So Batwing follows some noises coming down some halls. We see Maxie's being dragged away. Prepare the vessel, all these whispering in the walls. And as Batwing is looking for Jim Corrigan, he eventually comes across this man sitting in the room, and he does a facial recognition, sees that's a guy named Dr. X, and he's just like, please help me. I work at Arkham Asylum. This place has been crazy for months. They took all of us. Most of us are dead now. It's absolutely, don't let it touch you. It kills what it touches. Don't let it touch you. And then all of a sudden, this spirit comes out of him and goes to touch Batwing. And before it can do so, Corrigan shows up and just bops Dr. X across the head, just being like, there you are. I've been looking for you all over the place. This is a tulpa. You shouldn't let it touch you. He was honest about that. So Batwing's like, okay, is this guy going to be all right? As he literally starts like melting into the ground, and Corrigan's like, doubt it. Hey, look, here's the thing. I know what's going on. I know who's behind this. It's a dead person, an enemy of Gotham from a long time ago. Do you know, have you seen anything down here? It looks like a satanic church. And he's like, oh yeah, there's one like right down there. I just saw it earlier. Just like, awesome, cool. Let's go check that out. So they hear a loud voice saying, my people. And it turns out they're too late. It's already like right behind them. And the body of Maxie Zeus is now possessed, as Jim Corrigan says, by Deacon Blackfire. And Deacon's like, my people, our hour grows near, our salvation is at hand, but those two are non-believers. So dead or alive, bring them to me. And yeah, that's where the issue leaves off. Deacon Blackfire, Maxie Zeus, pulling out the big names. Yeah, I don't really know anything about Maxie Zeus, like at all. Deacon Blackfire I know only because there was a story in Rebirth, I think it was in Batgirl, that dealt with him and like gave his full backstory, but this book isn't doing anything to help you in regards to that. Hopefully there's a bit more backstory next issue. Beyond that, it's an okay issue. It's not anything too big, too bulky, but like, yeah, it's fine, I guess is what I'm saying. I didn't get as much out of this as I did other ones, but it's also focusing on a plot that I think has potential, but it's in that same sort of vein of a lot of the Future's End stuff going on, where I just don't feel like it's given me enough explanation to care yet. It's so focused on the mystery that it's not given me a reason to be invested. So hopefully we can get that fixed soon, or just go back to the Batman stuff and the Jason Bard stuff full sail, because I really, really like that. I like the way that was turning out. So overall, this one's probably like a 6 for me. Not too fantastic, but passable. Future's End number 12, written by Azzarello, Lemire, Jurgens, and Giffen, art by Jesus Marino. So this issue picks up with the Stormwatch crew, who had just crash-landed into a giant metal bowl, and as they get out of their ship, they are immediately accosted by a bunch of very obviously brainiac robots. And Frankenstein's like, all right, let's try to be diplomatic. Hello, robots. We are from Earth. We come in peace. And the robots are like, kill all things, and they just start firing at the group. So immediately Hawkman, Frankenstein, and Amethyst just jump in, start slashing and blasting robots as best they can. Hawkman pulls out to Amethyst like, hey, aren't you magic? Couldn't you do a spell or something? She's like, nah, I just slash stuff now. I don't have any magic powers left. And he's like, well, that sucks. And then Frankenstein's just like, I tried to give you robots the benefit of the doubt, but instead you decided to be evil. So, yeah. And then one of them slashes his face, to which they point out, hey, Frankenstein, you're bleeding like human blood. Like, not your weird black goop stuff. And he's like, that shouldn't be happening. What robot sorcery is this? So Amethyst looks up on the hill and sees that one of the robots looks different, and it turns out it's actually Engineer, the missing member of Stormwatch that they came here for. And she is overridden by Brainiac stuff and saying like, oh, stupid robots, can't even kill a couple of Stormwatch members. You know what? All of you self-destruct and send yourself to the recycle heap. And they're like, will do. And then Engineer releases some weird cord tentacle things from her mouth, ties up the members of Stormwatch, and shocks them all into submission. So then we cut to Baltimore, where King Faraday is talking to a woman. And for the goddamn life of me, I have no idea if I'm supposed to have any idea who this is. I don't even know if I should know. So we see he's basically talking to this woman. She's a very punk, and he's basically just trying to like say, hey, you know, you gotta help me out, do whatever. And she's just like, screw you, I don't have to do anything. You suck, Faraday. And just like, oh, but we could help you so much, Courtney. And she's like, that's not my name. My name's not Courtney. Stop telling me to do stuff like that. And she has some sort of power set that's very ill-defined at this point, but she's asking about Voodoo and the twins. And Faraday's like, oh yeah, Voodoo is fine. I don't know about the twins or who's even after him, but like, Courtney, it's going to catch up with you sooner or later. And she's like, yeah, all right. So where's Deathstroke then, huh? He's out there, isn't he? He's keeping an eye on things. And just like, oh, it's just precautionary, no big deal. So then Faraday speaks into his headset and says like, all right, give her a haircut. And then all of a sudden a bullet zooms through her window and like cuts off a few of her hairs. And she's like, screw you, Faraday, you son of a bitch, get out of my house. So at that point, Courtney looks out the window, and I'm calling her that until I get a different name. And she gets a phone call from Voodoo. And Voodoo's like, hey, yeah, I got jumped in my apartment. Wait a minute, if it was Faraday talking to you? And she's like, yeah, nah, he's fine. He's concerned about us, and he was reaching out to making sure everything's fine, but like, screw him, you know? And she's like, totally. So they say how they're compromised, and like, you know, everyone knows some stuff, and they need to meet up. So Voodoo says she'll alert the twins, and Courtney will meet up soon enough. So we cut over to Voodoo getting off the phone. She's with Justin, who of course was working with Grifter. And Justin wants to know what the hell's going on. And Voodoo just says, Black Ops went wrong. The guy I used to work for is trying to kill me. Faraday's concerned, and that's never good. So whoever it is she was previously working for is currently trying to wrap up loose ends, I guess. Regardless, she brings up Faraday, and Justin's like, oh yeah, Grifter was being tracked by that guy before he went missing. Like, it's something related to that. So Voodoo hops on the phone and calls to what I guess is the twins, says Banger. Again, I don't know who we're talking about. I have no clue who Banger is. But regardless, she's like, hey, can I call you back? I've got some company here that needs some attending to. And then you hear loud bangs and yells and stuff like that. And so she just goes on hold, and they say like, oh yeah, she's just killing a few people, no big deal. So we go to Metropolis, and we meet up with Ethan and Rampage, who escaped from the jail like 3 issues ago. And apparently Rampage broke Ethan out because Ethan is a world-class geneticist, and Rampage was originally like a smart girl who had some experiments that went wrong, and she turned into this big hulking monster, and she wants to be changed back. And Ethan's like getting nude pics from someone on his phone, and it pisses off Rampage, so she just grabs the phone and crushes it. And Ethan's like, hey, don't worry about it. I'm going to strap you down so that way, you know, you don't move, and then I'll attach all these sensors and whatnot, and I'll be sure to fix you, and I will give you what you need because you freed me from prison, and nothing's more important than my freedom. So he puts all this tech on her, and as she's incapacitated, he's like, oh, by the way, because I want you to be able to give Superman more of a hard time, I'm actually not going to cure you. In fact, I'm going to make you worse and even more powerful. So have fun with that. And he turns on the machine, sends it into overdrive. The whole building like explodes as he just walks out and texts whoever's sending him nudes. Okay. And like, I thought that would be the part where I was like, that's the weirdest thing that I've seen today. But no, because this whole story is set 5 years in the future. Except for this part, where they're setting it 35 years from the future in Arkham Asylum. And a little drone wakes up and says, detainee 17, get ready for your food tube. And the detainee's like, no, I mean, you can't make me. And he's like, yes, we can. Open your food tube. So we see this mouth open up, a tube goes into it, gives some nutritional whatever, and it turns out, very quickly, it's the Joker. And he's sitting in this dark room, and then all of a sudden, lights turn on, door opens up. We see we see Frankenstein, someone I'm unfamiliar with, and I think it might even be Lobo, who've all been absorbed by Brother Eye. And they say, detainee 17, you are to come with us. We have a plan. Your human life of torment has ended. And he's just like, oh, thank God you're going to kill me. He's like, no, not quite. So they strap him up, take him down to a surgical room. Joker looks around. He sees that, like, Two-Face has had the human part, or the normal part, cut out of him, replaced with robots, only left with the second face part. And he's just like, yes, the pure tyrannical steel. I see all of this. And so he goes into the surgical room, and he's cracking jokes the whole way in, but when he finally gets in, he sees Batman is tied down to the surgery table, and Batman's eyes open up. He locks eyes with Joker. Joker gives a smile. Batman furrows his brow, and then it just ends on Joker's laugh. So I don't know what the hell is going on there, man. It's not a great issue, if I'm being honest with you. Again, I was praising it recently because they finally went through and said, okay, Grifter, here's all your mysterious bits, and we're just going to spell out the whole damn story, and we're going to say exactly what's going on with you, so that way the audience can get involved. And the moment they do that, they then pivot over and say, but now there's a new mystery involving voodoo and a bunch of characters you don't know, and we're not going to tell you who they are, because screw you. And I have so little patience for this book left, and yet I have 36 more issues to go. So, yeah, this one's probably like, I gotta give this one like a 5. I felt it was a chore to read through. It just was not entertaining me at all. So here's hoping. I mean, the ending bit had something cool, but if they're going to be stuck in the future, who cares? Unless we're going to get a weird Terminator thing where we're going to get Jokerized robots going back in time. I mean, that sounds cool now that I say it, but I doubt they're going to do it. Anyway, 5 for this. And that's it. That is all the comics that came out from DC Comics this July 23rd, 2014. And now that I am saying that date out loud and looking at it on my paper, I really think that July 23rd is a date I'm supposed to remember. I don't think it's like a holiday or anything, but I think it's somebody's birthday or anniversary. And I can't remember whose. That's going to put me in some hot water later. Anyway, I will figure that out on my own time. For you, I have the comics coming out next week. So why don't we talk about those? Because it is a 5th week. We get some annuals, and Geoff Johns finally catching up, because if it weren't for 5th weeks, he just would never put out a comic. So we have only 8 comics coming out. We've got Detective Comics Annual number 3, Red Lanterns Annual number 1, Aquaman Annual number 2, and then we have the regular issues for Sinestro, Harley Quinn, Justice League, and our 2 weeklies, obviously, of Batman Eternal and Future's End. So decent amount going on there. And then, as is typical with 5th weeks, I will talk about backup stories that have come out since the last 5th week. That being said, I think it's only one. I think there was an All-Star Western backup, and that's it. But I will double check before we get to next week's episode. So I'm sure that's the reason you tune in, because you're so interested in the stories that couldn't even be marketed as the main event. Woo. Anyway, with all that said, I will go ahead and just do the end of show stuff. Please tune in until the end, because I always see the dive in attention here in this last segment, which I guess I probably should have said prior to starting the segment, but whatever. Yeah, if you have any comments on any of the comics that came out this week, last week, we could all go ahead and hit us up in the comments down below this video if you're watching the video version, or like any place you want on the audio version. But if you're looking for a specific place, we have a subreddit, we have a Discord, and we have a Patreon. All of those are available to you to use, and just say whatever you want. We're barely moderated. So yeah, that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching, listening, however it is you consume this podcast. Be sure to tune in next week, and always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.